Yeah. All right. Cool. Right. So I'll get this sorted. All right. All right. All right. Okay. See. No. What's going on, man? Today. What is this? What is this? Fuck's sake.
What the fuck's happening?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me, mate?
Yeah, I can hear you, man.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know. It's never happened before. So never happened this before ever.
Seems a lot
Couldn't
better
make
now,
up the timing, eh?
Hey,
You couldn't make up the timing.
no, never ever happened ever. This is a piss take. Fucking screwing now. Right.
It seems a lot better now, Mike.
It's yeah, I need to make sure it's recording, you know what I mean? So I don't want to bloody be doing this for nothing.
Cool.
I don't want it to come up saying it's crashed and then cut everyone off. I mean, it just did a minute ago. Everyone can hear and see me. You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Cheers, Graham. Cheers, Dan. Right, let's right. I took the camera off just in case. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully this is it. Speaker's fine. You can see the screen. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so let's okay, let's right. Okay, right. So you can one more time, everyone can hear me, yeah? Someone say yes.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, right, just 4 minutes past 10. Right, not going to get everyone, not going to get all 60 people joining. But whoever's in the room, thank you very much. It's going to be quite a session. Right, what are we doing? Handicapping, using free sites this time. So we're going to be using Timeform and AtThe races, which are completely free. You can open up a free account with Timeform and get this kind of information that you can see on the right-hand side. So we're going to start off with the Timeform card. This is how it'll work. So the first part will be mainly Timeform. There might be a bit of AtThe races in it. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. I've got 42 slides to go through, and this is just this bit. Following that, the second part will be on stride data, which I'll go for a couple of examples, not too many, but then I'll go over to the card. It's easier to just show you how to navigate a card and look for the information and explain what to look for. So the Timeform card, this is it. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna waffle or talk bullshit or like tell you how hard trading all these bollocks. It's straight to business, by the way. I'm not going to explain staking or hold your hand. This is literally going hardcore into the actual stats, and so we're not wasting time. All right. Once I've finished this, it will be where's that thing? Where's it gone? It will be it's recorded basically. I'll download the video. It will take maybe an hour, over an hour to download. It takes forever. And once it's downloaded and I figure out how to send it, I will. Joking. So I'll send it to each and every one of you in your as a DM on Telegram, and you can listen, watch, cast it onto a screen or whatever, or on your PC. Right. So let's get to it. Right, so when we load up the Timeform card, it typically looks like this. Ignore the padlocks. Therefore, when you pay quite a lot of money to Timeform to access their kind of stats, like time for rating, their adjustments, and all that kind of thing. Not particularly interested in it. It never did anything for me. So a free account is fine. the free account will allow you to see all this kind of information that we're going to go into. So we're going to have details of each runner, obviously, and once we click on each one, you'll get a comprehensive overview of its history, and we'll go through that. What we're looking for, yeah, what are we looking for? We're basically looking for a horse. Well, I'm going to go through that in a second, obviously. Ideally, we're looking at identifying certain criteria that will provide you with some information that you might be able to correlate within the market, and identify either as a good opportunity to back to lay, lay to back, and so forth. All right, so let's crack on. Okay, so let me switch to pen mode. So the most important details are highlighted by the ticks here. Okay, so basically I can see that the 210 in Bath is at Bath is a handicap, and it's a class 4. I can see what the prize is at 4.5K or so, and more importantly, I can see the par rating. I can see the age, and we can see how many runners there are in the race. Obviously, surfaces, turf as opposed to all weather. We can see the current going, which is firm, good to firm in places, and we can see the distance. Okay, so that is at a glance. The most important thing, obviously, for me, which is what I'm going to go through, is the par rating here, which a lot of people don't really talk about. Okay, unfortunately. And the rest of the information you'll be able to correlate as you go along the each runner. Okay, I must say, I mean, for those of you that are into pace forecast, that it's a forecast. I mean, they're going by historics. If you was to look through some data of specific horses, you'll note that some of them, depending on the jockey, will race differently. Whether that's intentional as a plan from the trainer, or the jockey, or both, obviously, to take it out and set a pace up front, or not. You know, it's a different. The way it will run in a race, the pace wise. If you see, I'm going to digress slightly with the pace. If historically you see a horse that is a front runner and has a high pace rating, i.e. it will front run, and it doesn't, and it sits back, you might actually see that price drift quite quick in play, and vice versa. All right, because it's doing something out of the normal and not in line with the pattern that it's run in the past and perhaps performed very well. Basically, it's an outlier. One springs to mind, Andrea Adseni. He likes to front run a lot of his horses. Okay, he takes them on quite fast, and the market, some of them know that, and subsequently those horses might back to lay quite well, for what it's worth. It will make sense, obviously. So we'll get to the card straight away. Okay. So just an example here. So we're gonna. I've clicked on this particular one from the drop down, Jojo Rabbit, and what am I looking for? Once again, I know that from the previous slide that it's an 85 par. Okay. Can you put yourselves on mute, please? So we, yeah, otherwise it will spoil the presentation. Thank you. It's an 85 par race at this moment in time. We can also see how it's performed historically at this part, and this is the whole point. It's a 3-year-old race, and I say allow discretion as it's a 3-year-old race. Why is that, perhaps you're asking? 3-year-olds are progressive or regressive, depending, but we tend to expect horses at 3 years old, some of them to start improving as they gain muscle mass and experience, and also start to adjust in distance, so they'll start to go up. So for example, a 2-year-old, you might see a 2-year-old running more often in a sprint, but really that horse might be bred for distance. Yeah. So all of a sudden you might see the following year that this horse is no longer running at 5 furlongs. It may have run at the beginning at 6, and then all of a sudden you see it running at 7 furlongs or 8 furlongs. Okay, so you need to be mindful of that with 3-year-olds. Okay, the par, as I say here, let me just put the laser back on so you can see what I'm talking about. Right, so the par here, we know what that is. So it's a class 4 and it's an 85. Now, I've ticked this because it's a tick as yes, it's run at 85 here. It won at a class 5 stakes, not a handicap. And it's won, it performed very well in a field of 25. So it came second in a field of 25 at Newbury in a class 2. Now, obviously they had high hopes for this particular horse. When it won this Wolves Stakes, they entered it straight away into a class 1 group 2. Obviously it came 8th here. And then in a class 1 listed and came 5th. But note the distance, not too bad, even though it was 5th. Newbury again, not that far behind, but it beat 23 others. Okay, now if you just go to the side here, jockey wise, you can see Holly Doyle's got a strong association with this particular horse. Okay, has won with this particular horse and has lost 4 times. Luke Morris has also won with this horse on all weather. Now, ability on past performance, we can see the 2 wins, and they're both at class 5s. Okay, but these were as a 2-year-old. Yeah. And what I was saying before about 5 furlongs and 2-year-olds, majority of its life was as a 5 furlongs as a 2-year-old. And both wins, you will note, were on all weather. Okay, so on standard slow, all weather track, typically hard, obviously, anyway. So I marked the good to soft here because I can see obviously a horse doing well on all weather will typically do quite well on a good to firm, basically sound turf conditions. It's not surprising, obviously, when we see it attempt the just here at Ascot the first time, apart from the ability aspect, maybe good to soft, didn't do great, and then we go up to good, and it done a lot better, and then it goes back to the 5 furlongs on the all weather, back to class 5 where it last won, and it won in a 10 field, which is quite decent. And then what happens? It goes back to good to soft. Now, slightly now, as it goes on, you can, by this point, you would have been able to have had a look and seen, right, this particular horse, okay, not done great previously, just won a race, albeit a class 5, and now it's gone up to class 4. And it's first time attempting a par rated race, okay? And it's going off as a favourite. So markets price this in as a favourite. Why? Because it won the last time potentially, because Holly's on it, and Holly's won with it before, and so on. Okay, although it hasn't fared fantastically well apart from this class 2 stakes. Yeah, so we look at all of this kind of information going from left to right. Okay, and you go up into the new year after a whole year break, and it's running at Ripon in an 85 rated race, class 4. Now, when it goes into as a 3-year-old, as I said before, it's progressive. We need to kind of like look at the market as well and see what they're thinking. So we've got a BSP of 8.82. Okay, and we've got a new rider on board here, Joanna Mason. Now, what I tend to do is I like to look at the association of the jockey with the trainer, and I'll show you later how to do that quite easily, and see what the history is and association is with that jockey. There's a claimer. The number 3 here is a claimer, so she's taking off £3 off the horse as well. Okay, now you'll see in this one here it came second. Okay, and again it lost by 1.25 lengths. Let's go to the next slide quickly. Right, so we've got all the runners here, okay, and all you do is click on there and you can go through each one. Okay, you've got this is the most important info as I've just shown you. Okay, and you've got an overview here, but if you click on each one, you'll see the highlighted green and so on. Right, runner 2, equality. So if we look at equality, once again, one at class 5. James Doyle on board, came first in a small field here. And after a 55-day break, returns at a very high class 2 handicap race, not a stakes or listed or group. It's coming at a 105 par race. So whether that was whether that was the owner, the trainer putting it forward, or whether it qualified for these races, it's very, very, very big jump, I'd say, from a class 5, and it failed pretty miserably. Was it the ground conditions here, or was it the rating? I beg to, well, I prefer to say it was this class 2, probably just too not good enough. If you look on the right, the clues were there anyway, so it wasn't expected. It was quite a high value here in the industry odds and the BSP, and it didn't really drop much, if anything, from the BSP. Okay. It is, however, relatively unexposed in terms of running at that lower par, so it's a tricky one to deduce this. Yeah, and I'm picking on the 3-rods because there's a lot of 3-rod races at this in the early stages of the summer, and jumping in and going on previous speed ratings. If you're using speed ratings, it's not that clever, really. You need to take into account the ability factor, and where it's won. Now, the only thing I'd say here is cannot dismiss due to conditions, because it won by a whole 9 lengths in the past. Yeah. So whether or not it was outdone by a lot, much better horses here, but the fact remains that when it did win at 5 furlongs, it did win comprehensively in that class 5. If you recall, Jojo Rabbit was also class 5. Okay, so let's move on. Right, runner 3. I'm not going through all the runners, don't worry, but I'm just trying to highlight, when you go on, you'll just see all these clues. Now, you see lots of ticks here. So when I'm qualifying, it's just the ticks kind of like highlight how I look at the chart and how I assess it and rank in terms of how I see this horse performing. So lots of ticks discussed. So once again, the last 3 horses that we've looked at, including this one, rather, last 2 horses and this one, they've won at class 5 at Wolves. That's what they've got going for them. This one here actually is pretty strong and has only missed out the next 2 times. And then as the season's gone on, excuse me, it stopped for its break. New year now. And we're going into a handicap race at a par of 70. Yeah, a lot lower than 85. It doesn't do too bad for the first try. Okay, and on firm ground again. All right, it lost by 2 lengths, and it was Gina on board.
Oh, come on.
You mute your mic, please. Okay, now following that, in August, then all of a sudden we see this happening. And now, first run out after you have a horse has a break. Okay, after a break, rather, the horse may need a run or 2 to get fit, maybe. Okay, it's come back in, or perhaps intentionally. The trainer had Gina on board, for example. Okay, we'll see now how it went on next, because it ran again in a 70 rated race, and it won by half a length this time. Similar rate, it was rated. Here's the official rating here. It wasn't rated that much. It was only 1 point lower than the previous. It ran pretty well, but obviously whether or not the way the race turned out, or it won a 10 field anyway on good to firm once again. Had a Sheen on board. Okay, price wise at 8, so it wasn't a decent shout, and it probably would have been probably in the top 3, 4 in the betting. We see it go to Chepstow then. Now, this is the interesting thing that you need to look at. Okay, so if it's going at a class 5 handicap and it's just won a 70 and it's racing 3 days later, 19th of August from the 16th, yeah, highly likely that the trainer already had this booked in. In fact, it might have even had this one booked in. Okay, that you can find that out on At the Races, and I'll show you later. Okay, so it dropped in past slightly and went down a class, and quite good. It had the subsequent £6 penalty, but it was too good for that field, and it won again. Now this time with Gina. What's interesting, obviously, he introduced Gina again, who had some acquaintance with this particular horse. Gina's offering a £7 offset from the £6 penalty. Okay, and it narrowly wins this race just by 0.2. Short head even. 3 days later, again, another £6 rise, but Gina's on board, offsetting that again. Okay, and it goes up to a class 5 again. And this time, with the horse getting fitter and fitter and being a progressive horse, it wins this race as well. Now you can see the market reflected this one. It was joint favourite here, and then the following one, it became a favourite at 2.37. So looking at those kind of clues will give you an idea as to the market and why it's forecasted to do well in this particular race, and perhaps maybe not oppose it. Right, now say conditions suit progressive. Okay, so if we go back to the beginning very quickly, just to look at the conditions here, we are still on firm ground, and we are at 5 furlongs still as well. We know that these particular horses are pretty decent at the firm, especially this one. Okay, and it won at 6, 5, and 5. Right, runner 4. What I'd like to say about the runner 4. Runner 4 is very interesting. Runner 4 didn't fare very well as a 2-year-old. Was never really massively far away, but didn't fare too well, and never really ran at 5 furlongs. You'll note it's 6, 7, and almost 7 here as well in heavy, and also at Lingfield. So it's coming back now into the new year. It's had some time off, and it's entered into a class 4 80 rating, so not that far from our 85 on an all-weather. 7 furlongs again. Doesn't do fantastically well, and then it goes in at a class 4 again on turf this time, good to firm, and narrowly loses here. Okay, switch of jockey, so we've got Jack Mitchell on board, and it does very well, almost just probably on the nod there, loses. Okay, now what's interesting is when you see the horse here at 11.5 BSP and that 80 rating, excuse me, on June, all of a sudden, not that far away, we've got it racing at Windsor at 75, slightly lower, and it's in that favourite. Okay, we've got reason to believe it might do well. Okay, it didn't do terribly bad, I suppose, but still at 6 furlongs. Okay, and then we go to Newmarket and so on. Again, it's basically pretty. Whether or not the horse was unlucky by the way the race turned out or not, we don't know at this stage. You can find out maybe if the video is available, which is another thing I'll talk about later. But all of a sudden, it's 14 days later. So the horse is fit now. Yeah, this is what you need to look at. The horse is now fit. It's running on the 14th of August at Bath in a class 5. Remember, it's experienced in an 80 field, and the market's got it at 4.2. Not favourite, but it's running at a pretty low price there. And all of a sudden, it's dropped in distance. Okay, now we've got Trevor Whelan on board. Again, Trevor, if you look at Trevor's association with this particular trainer, Roger Till, I think he had in that year, actually, he had 3 out of 3 wins with him, if memory serves. Okay, so Trevor had a good season with him then. he was trusted to go on board this one, and he won that race comfortably by 2 furlongs. So if you was to look at some of the comments on this one, this is again, just slightly digressing. If you was to look at some comments, you'll probably find that this horse may have in the comments weakened or no extra at the end. So it ran well, led, no extra inside final furlong. Typically, those are the comments that come with it. Yeah. So you can kind of like understand why the market's got it at those kind of odds potentially. Okay, in that particular race. So it's one to note. Right, so this is the market. Okay, so check Chipstead out. Chipstead was favourite with Trevor Whelan on board, having won the last race. Blue Moonrise with those wins before. Just to remind you, Blue Moonrise was this one here with plenty of green. Now you have to ask yourself why this horse isn't favourite. You'd think that this horse would be in the 2s at least. Okay, based on winning the last 3 races. It wasn't. Chipstead was a massive favourite in comparison. Yeah, so you have to say, okay, it's a bit of an outlier here. Something's going on. You know, and this is what I say here. The winner last time out is odds on fave. Blue Moonrise won the last 3. I dismissed equality due to the 2 recent poor runs at class 2. However, the market done that for me here, and put it way out of contention in terms of probability and price, obviously. We will revisit the result, but the fave looks promising as he won by 2 lengths at 0 to 75 par. And obviously Jojo raced at 85 last time and not far behind. So I kind of like thought, okay, from a value point of view, Jojo, but maybe, okay. And Chipstead I found quite interesting. And it's easy to say, oh, it's a false fave and lay it, but at those odds, it's a little bit. Right, so let's just see what happened. This is literally at post time, the pricing. Jojo's Blue Moonrise has gone out a little bit. Jojo's come in a bit, and Chipstead stayed pretty much the same. Okay, so the short fave wins. It didn't drift too much. It hit 1.5 and went out to a high of circa 2.5, and then it just came crashing down. Okay, so sudden drop when Blue Moonrise refused to race. This is how it went. So Blue Moonrise didn't bother racing, so we get the sudden drop. The 2 other ones dropped well enough. Equality being the value one, we thought, based on those 3 wins. It actually it dropped to 2.0 in running, and Jojo actually dropped to 2.8 also. Right. Okay, so there we go. I've got some people coming to dump some stuff in. Right, so the Faith pulled in front in the final 200 yards. Okay, and it winning at 5 furlongs by 2 lengths. So it won actually very, very convincing. The other 2 will have their day as fitness comes into play or a lower rating. What I mean by lower rating, when they're first handicapped, these sometimes at 2 years old and or at the start of their 3, after they've raced in enough races or won a race, they can be particularly treated unfairly by the handicapper and basically made out to be a better horse than what they really are. Right. So the betting forecast odds. Okay, so these are the forecast odds here down below. You can find these on the Timeform. This is the At the Races card. You can see how Blue Moonrise was 13 to 8. Chipstead was actually fancied at short, 7 to 4. Jojo Rabbit and Equality here. If you compare that to the market and what the odds are, it's quite telling. You can maybe say, oh, Blue Moonrise was at a decent price and Equality even better, obviously. But I used to look at these forecasted odds quite a lot in the past and try and have a correlation with the market. I don't look at that anymore. Right, so the betting forecast odds are interesting. They don't mirror the market sentiment as it stands. Blue Moonrise being the fave. Blue Moonrise wasn't fave. Chipstead was the fave. Yeah, Blue Moonrise wasn't the fave, rather. Okay, but being the forecasted fave. Also, we can see quite easily that the lowest BHA rating horse is the fave. Okay, so if we look at this here, Chipstead was at 79 on the official rating compared to the others, which were in the 80s. Okay. What kind of things will you take out of that? Well, the handicapper will sort out Chipstead anyway now by pushing him higher and potentially lowering maybe one of the others, maybe a notch or two, or in the following race if they don't do well in the subsequent races ahead. Right. So, before I crack on, is there any questions with regards to any of this information so far that you want me to clarify? You can type on the Telegram. By the way, if there's any questions, you can just type on the channel and I can answer them rather than talking, just in case more than one tries. If you have got any questions, I can see them and I can revert back to them and answer them when the time's right. Okay, so excuse me. Another past example here, yeah. Kempton this time, and once again we've got a handicap, and it's a class 4, and our par rating is 80. Now this time it's a 4-year-old plus race. So just to clarify, you've got a 2-year-old race, a 3-year-old race, a 3-year-old plus race, which can be a mix, and a 4-year-old plus race, which there won't be any 3-year-olds in. Okay. There's some decent little angles in there that I'll talk to you about later. Okay, and then we've got the distance here as well. Now, Kempton, I'm not sure if you're aware, Kempton, the ground is akin to good to soft when it comes to turf as an equivalent. So if you've got a horse that's done well on a good to soft, running first time at Kempton, shouldn't be that dissimilar. Okay, just something to note. I've highlighted the information in the rectangle. I immediately note the following, which I've just gone through. So straight away, that takes literally a second to grasp. And then we go into the horses, and this one sticks out very well. Indigo Times. You can see from Indigo that all weather-wise, fantastic. Yeah, and we can see that at Kempton's performed very well at the 80 rating. And narrowly lost here. Okay, let me just remind myself of the it's almost 2 miles basically, the race anyway. Okay, so narrowly lost with a Sheen Murphy. We can see Donahoe had a couple of wins. Shepherd and Haley has had a win on this horse, and you can look at the odds here. One out of the blue here, obviously 12.5 BSP. And then obviously after that, it was always considered a favourite or one of the faves. Apart from this race, which quite strange. And I'll tell you why. It's progressive. It won 2 on the bounce. And what happened was it got bumped up from a 70, a 60, a 70, then an 80, which it almost won. Went down to a 70, which is a clever move by the trainer. And then it got pushed up to a class 3 90 par, hence the odds. Now, you could compare with the other horses, but you wouldn't probably have found a horse in better nick, okay, or history. And for me, the most important thing here obviously I'm not going to pose a horse at that, but it would have been interesting as a back to lay potentially, would be the fact that it done very well at an 80 part previously. Turns out, obviously it went back to 16.5 furlongs, having won at 16 furlongs here, and it done very well and won by 2.25 lengths. And then it went up again. If that wasn't enough, it won another class 3 at Chelmsford at 95, winning again by over a length, okay, over 14. So quite a talented horse. You'll see at the top here, 22nd of May, after a 93 break, went up to a class 2, 105 on turf. You'll notice that the horse isn't terribly exposed. Exposed is the term used for when a horse, you've pretty much got a lot of history on the horse, and you're able to deduce whether or not that horse can cut it on that surface, on those conditions, etc. We can see here in the past that this low rating here of 60 on good, albeit at lower distance, it didn't do too bad here by length as it happens, but that's a class 6. But in a class 5, good to firm, not really. Okay, it took a little while anyway for it to get going, this particular horse. So you couldn't dismiss it maybe on the form itself. But the one caveat I would say to you, hence why I say well, you wouldn't dismiss it, but the one caveat for me, on soft here, the soft kind of like messes it up for this particular horse and for me. And the fact that it might be a jump too high. So I'm going to be looking at other horses in that, on that card, in that race, that may have maybe similar or decent experience at class 3, class 4, class 2 even, but at least running at that kind of distance, that part and that surface type. Okay, so par today is prolific for, right, so the part, this is obviously the last race. The par today is 0 to 80, so we can see that it can easily handle 0 to 80. Yeah, it's beaten enough horses up to even 95. The horse is down from 95, as I say here, exclamation mark. Has also won easily enough in February and entered the turf race on return from break, which is this one here. Now, that might have been a fitness exercise, hence why maybe George Rook was on board and not one of the other ones. Okay, that is more associated with the horse. And they narrowly lost the first time at Kempton. So the race is at Kempton, okay, today, for example. And we know that this horse can run at Kempton and just narrowly lost. Same par, running at the same par today. All right, so let's see another horse. So we're looking at the opposition now. Okay, so this horse here completely looks like shit compared to that horse. We see that it's won a class 6. Boo-hoo. Okay. It was a 55, but might even be a Division 2 race, not Division 1. So a 12 field race at 12 furlongs, and then after that, narrowly lost. Keeping Jack on board, they took the horse away for a little bit for hibernation, and it came out in March and went up a notch. Now, this was quite impressive, though, because it went to class 5 after its break in the new year. And it narrowly lost. Now, note though, however, how it's gone up in distance now. Okay, so it's gone up in distance. It narrowly lost. Conor Murtagh was on board, so first time riding this particular horse. So we might see this guy running again in the future. And sure enough, we do 2 races later. Whatever happened to this particular horse, whether it liked the track at Newcastle, I don't know, but I doubt it. It's won at Wolves before. Something went off with this horse. Maybe it was just the competition. Okay, it just went off the ball a bit, and this happens with horses. Sometimes they are animals; they're not robots, and sometimes, even though you think it's dead set, it's going to win or it's going to lose, they either turn it off, turn it on. Okay. There's also the, I'm a heavy believer in manipulation and fixed races. It might be that that particular race was a bent race. Who knows? Okay. It was, excuse me, it was fancied on the 10th of April here. It was fancied at 3.74. So the odds weren't too bad. But look at and the thing is, why we would maybe expect a good run is how it dropped from 36 previously BSP to 3.74. Okay, that's the difference. However, for me, I would, if after this Newcastle race, it would have raised an eyebrow. But the way it ran after, it just put me off this particular horse, and it doesn't compare to Indigo Times. It's way out of its league. And by the way, if you just look down, because I haven't gone through these, class 5 stakes, they're not rated. And 70, 66, there's nothing really to suggest that this horse might have been injured. needed the wind operation, maybe. Not that it had one, but I'm just saying, if there's something wrong with it, we don't know, but it's, you know, it might have just got lucky here as well. You can watch the race repeat on Betfair or sometimes or on At The Races and see. Merhib's a different one. Merhib's quite good. So it's got a par win, as you can see here, Chelmsford. Different ground, but at Chelmsford at 80. We can see Rob Havlin is a serial jockey on this one here and has been a massive part of its success and narrowly lost here as well. So we see Lingfield and Chelmsford, slightly different to Kempford, Kempton rather, the surface. Has run at Kempton, never far behind here. Different jockey, but look at the rating. And look at the rating, I will add this. Look at the rating on the races that it's won here. It progressed and it carried on improving. So one to look out for. It went up to 85 and it lost by 2.75 with a decent jockey on board. I'm highlighting the ticks off of the distance because that's the distance for today. And the Kempton Class 4, 80 par, again, it loses by 6 furlongs. So basically, this horse isn't in great nick. So it went to 85, it failed. Then they dropped it to 80 here. And it lost quite badly with Rob Havlin on board. And then if we look up again at the next race in July, they actually kept it off for a month for some reason. They dropped it a par again, even though the rating didn't really deviate much here. They dropped it to 75 and it did worse still. It came 6 and again beaten by 5. So I would say this particular horse is competitive potentially, doesn't like Kempton based on these 2 races, and hasn't won at Kempton on that par or performed well. So again, I'm going to look at the market and see. By the way, note Kempton, Class 5, 75. Note the odds, 91. Very high for some reason. No idea. There were 3.9 and 4.1. 3.9 here at Kempton, and then they lowered it a par slightly. Class 5 lowered class by 1, and they upped it to 91 BSP. That's actually, I've just noticed that. That's actually quite mad. It has won at Kempton, guys. Look at the bottom, though, yeah? It has actually won at Kempton, but at par 50 and in the stakes, yeah? This is what I mean. When a horse wins early on, it doesn't mean that it's going to progress, or it might stagnate and go backwards. Takani's interesting. Got a lot of green on here, yeah? Now, it went from turf. The history of this horse is turf, flat racing, switched to chasing and hurdling, jumps basically, and they brought it back here, maybe for the it's for the longer distance racing and maybe for a bit of fitness pre-jump season. Okay, so we can see there's some decent wins here. Dougie Costello and Paddy Brennan having won on this horse before. Okay. The distance isn't a problem for the horse. Okay, with Paddy on board, even Dougie's done very well with it. Now look at the pars, not the same. Obviously, you can't compare the pars on the jumps with the flat. Okay, so 75 and 70 has won, but it's not an 80. Excuse me. However, it has won in a Class 4 at Kempton at 80. But lost by some distance, even though it came second. The second might flatter it a little bit. It was a favourite at the time as well. So a strong horse, nevertheless, has got some ability. We need to look at the market now. Okay, so there's the results. Surprise, surprise. Indigo Times won this particular race. It was second fave, even at 3.8. Okay, 3.34 was Takani. I would never have had Takani as beating Indigo Times. It actually lost by 3 1/4 lengths. So Takani led, kicked on home, hung left, headed, no extra. Okay, now Indigo Times in touch, 2 furlongs out, led approaching and quick and clear, won comfortably. If you look back at the previous comments on the other races, I wouldn't be surprised if that was very similar. So on the left, what have I written? Market skewed as it was perceived as very competitive when Indigo was by far the best horse. Takani lost by over 3 lengths and dropped to 2 IP. I mean, not being funny, when a horse is backed at 3.34 as a BSP opening price, most of the times you're going to get a drop in play. Merhib. Now remember Merhib. For me, Merhib was a surprise. It started off as really low. Look at that, 3.9. Remember Merhib? This one. Now, because this here may have flattered it slightly because it won at the 80, but then it fell miserably before. And based on that 91.72, it would have raised an eyebrow. Well, it did raise an eyebrow for me, actually. That from 91 BSP, racing again at Kempton, it's all of a sudden at 3.9. Muftaka wasn't that far off anyway at 5.29. Quite low odds again. Okay, now Indigo only drifted by about 1 tick in play. Okay, as you can see there on the top right, its high was 3.85. This type of profile is a very good example of how to use par information and profiling a race. Okay, you will not have to look very hard. Sorry, spell check there. Fail. You might not look have to. Oh, sorry, no, actually, no, it's me. You will not have heard too many talk about this angle. Okay, but if you just look at a lot of the results and cross-reference, you'll be actually quite surprised with what you'll find. Now, I think I've got a let's just have a look. Yeah. On this one here. Right, now you've got the same thing now. I'm showing you on at the races. Okay, so this one here, the only difference here, which is why I look at Timeform and I cross-reference with at the races. I like at the races because I can see the comments a lot better and all that kind of thing. Maybe I just like colors. But at the races hasn't got the par rate in there. It will have it somewhere in small maybe, but it hasn't got it at the top. Just to quickly see, it's a 3-year-old only, this particular race, and it's a class 4. Okay, we're racing at Newcastle. Okay, now this is how it looks like on Timeform. Yeah, so we've got the rating, 3-year-old. Okay, and it's a apprentice. No, products AtThe handicap. Okay, no, it's not apprentice. It's class 4 rating. Sorry, it's a class 4 race as well. Okay, so this is Irish and Dramathos. Just as a side note, if any of you have ever looked at dam sires and sires before, just as a side note, these two horses share the same sire. Why do I say that? I don't know. I'm joking. The reason I mention it is they're only 3-year-olds. They've only raced 3 previous races. Their form is Irish Legend's got a couple of wins. Dramathos has got a win. Okay, you can see the rating there on the right. It goes from 87 and goes down to 71. Doesn't mean the top rated horse. As I said before, the higher the rating may be, you might be, you know, punching above, or the handicap has been a bit too generous, perhaps, on a horse sometimes. But this particular horse, obviously with the lower rating, it normally goes hand in hand. That will be the lightest as well, H7 in terms of carrying weight. So the X highlights the handicapper's opening rating. Okay, so Dramathos was a newly handicapped horse. Worth noting that P stands for cheek pieces, being worn for the first time today. Okay, and I've noted that it won its first race, came 4th last time out, and already the handicappers, thank you, already the handicappers given this one an 85 rating. Handicappers can really screw up when handicapping horses for the first time. Both have cheek pieces on, which some system backers like to take note of. So I mentioned that about the system backers because some people, there are systems where people will look at an age group maybe, or cheek pieces on first time, and they tend to, they may back the horse or they may lay that particular horse depending. So if you see an anomaly in the price sometimes, it'll be that. Especially early on, for example, BOG, if that still is a thing. Irish Legend. So we've only got 3 races. So these horses are relatively unexposed. There isn't much history to them. So what we know about them, they're running on at Newcastle. This particular horse, Irish Legend, has actually won a Class 2 stakes, 10 furlongs with Probert on board, and has won on heavy ground as well. Now, what that says to me is that this particular horse is actually pretty talented, because it can actually handle turf and all weather, turf on heavy ground, but obviously potentially can do well on a firmer ground as well. Class 1 might have been a stretch too far when it got into the groups. Okay, so it came last here. That was after a break, however, of 167 days. Quite a big break, and the market had it at 21. But not being funny, though, it did actually drop. So it did drop to 5 in play, even though it came 10th. So something to consider. However, we are looking at a completely different race here. We're looking, remember, at a Class 4 85 par race. Okay. Now, if we look at the other horse here, what has the fave achieved? Okay, the fave was Dramathos, by the way, yeah? So what did Dramathos achieve? He won a maiden stakes, Class 5, by half a furlong. Wow. Not impressed. Actually drifted in play as well to 55. So it was at 7, went to 55 and came out. So obviously, whether or not another horse, something happened to another horse, there was a block, whatever, it just found the right passage, got jammy, who knows? It won this race. It's a shit race. It's a maiden, it's a Class 5. What happened after its 143-day break at Newmarket just here? It hit the turf at good to firm and came 4th, lost by 4 furlongs in a Class 4 stakes. All right, remember, not handicapped at this moment in time. So it won a stakes race. It would have been in the top 2, 3 horses at 4.89, 3-to-1 industry price. It hit only 3.1 in race with this Benoit Sayet on board, giving a £7 offset on its weight. So I'm not really impressed with this one at this moment in time. Not impressed that it lost by 4. Not impressed that it was a Class 4, and I'm not impressed that what it had achieved was only a win at maiden. Okay, so actually this was one that I traded. Okay, so you can see my bets here. So I did a 2-way Dutch on Irish Legend, as I fancied the win there, and I laid the field at 1.16. I left lays at 2 and 1.3 on Dramathos, so I was expecting the drop, but I didn't expect it to win. Going back to the fact that Dramathos was 2.4, being heavily backed at 2.4, market's going to back this bastard horse anyway, even though it's probably not going to win, right? I got matched at 2, but I didn't get matched at 1.53. However, Chase the Dollar, bless him, from 12.3, gave Irish Legend a good run for his money and got me matched at 1.16 here, and added to the profit, thankfully. Okay, and like I say, there's many ways to skin this, guys. You can do Dutches, you can do back to lays. This is the only thing I'm going to talk about staking wise. You can, so the lay the field for me, the way I look at that is an offset on the horse that I'm backing, and it's an offset on the horse that I'm laying, and I'm letting it play out. But because I've backed Irish Legend, I'm expecting it to win. At the very least, I'm going to get some profit off of Irish Legend, hopefully. The Chase the Dollar was the gravy. And if Dramathos hit 1.16, then I would have been looking at another 100 quid, had it lost, obviously, as well. So that's kind of like how my mind works when I'm looking at racing, and that's how I execute most of the times. Okay, you can see my liability there is not much. Okay, you could, it's not a lot. So that's, you know, there's no need to stake stupid money just to earn 3 figures or 4 figures. You just need to be sensible and calculated, and it doesn't mean you do every race. Right, slightly digress there, and let's just move on. How did Irish, now I just want to say, how did Irish Legend get on after that race? So here's the race that it won, yeah? Now, this is just to show you typically what happens later on in life. Because of that win on all weather, and remember, turf wasn't great at Class 1, they actually rushed this horse quite unfairly, in my opinion, into Class 2 territory at 105. Not fair, really. Didn't win, obviously. Placed, here, and lost by over 3 lengths, 2.5 lengths here. Okay. Was upped in trip as well for a couple of them. And here we've got soft ground. We know it can do well in heavy, and it's no coincidence that it did best here in terms of placing. Odds-wise, it dobbed. Okay, it dropped in odds here, didn't do well here, and then you can see the market sussed it out. Now, what happened? What happened next was interesting. So this would have been, for me, quite easy to lay by association of the previous par here. Okay, obviously I'd need to look at the whole market and look at the other horses in the market to compare, but I wouldn't have been that particularly interested. Now, what's interesting, on the 25th of August, returned to Kempton, and we went down to 90. Okay, and obviously it was down as a favourite because it's back on all weather, back at a decent distance, and got a decent jockey on board, and it lost literally by the bob of the head. Okay, I wouldn't have traded that. I wouldn't have backed it, and I wouldn't have laid it. I probably just wouldn't have been interested in this particular race or doing anything with this horse. Just the odds. I'm not a backer. I'm not a fan of evens. I don't think you've ever seen me call out a back and evens horse, and if anything, I might have put in a low lay if I fancied laying it, but I wouldn't have been interested in that horse at that time. Right. But this is just a random horse now, yeah? Just to let you know, look at the history. Now, I've been obviously talking to you about this just now. If you look at the history of a horse here, okay, any horse, you'll notice some patterns. And this is what want to bring to your attention, is pattern watching. So the trainer introduced this horse for the first time in almost 11 months. Check it out. 316-day break. Yeah. Can you see how the rating of this horse has dropped from when it won here, or when it was first handicapped here? Look, at 69. And it then started to win here, and then it would peak at 81. Can you see this? Okay. And then what happened, this particular horse, it just couldn't cut it. So it went from a 70 par race and a 75 par race up to 90s and struggled, really. Didn't win. Had a good go here and there. So it wasn't a complete dud, but just struggled. Changes stable. Went to Spencer, down to 75 again, struggled. Might have been injured, I don't know. Another 70-day break, gave it another rest. Maybe it was injured. Again at 75, then 80, then tried it out again. Nothing. Check how many different jockeys. I mean, Tony, they tried him out again here, for example. Nothing. Another break. 65 now. Rated 65. Last. Has another break. So basically, this Spencer got mugged. Right? He got mugged proper. He bought a horse. He didn't produce. I mean, he placed once, twice, 3 times, for Spencer's, no, he placed once. Yeah, he got mugged off. So whoever bought that horse, yeah, got mugged. Now, the point I'm making here is it comes back after 316 days. it's at its lowest ever rating, and you're going to hear the commentators say that this horse is got. I fact, or one of them will say this horse has a good chance. It's maybe might spring a surprise. It's running at its lowest ever rating. Okay, and look at the price. Look at the industry odds. It's favourite of 15-8. So it literally it comes first. Obviously, not by much at all. If anything, even looks like a dead heat nearly. But it comes first from a field of 10, 7 furlongs with Stefano Churchy, whatever his name is, on board. Okay, at its lowest ever mark, and that is an interesting pattern. If you never scrolled down to see this, okay, and to see where it started its journey, how it fell from grace, and why on earth is it a favourite today, then you might want to be looking at the second fave and see whether or not that's a decent lay, if it's a joint fave or not. Okay, those are the clues you get with this kind of history, looking at the par rating and the handicap rating. You just get really, and when you correlate it to the betting, that's where you start to get your patterns. Where are we? Where are we looking at? Let me just have a quick look. Right, okay. So let me just see where I'm going with this one, so I'm remind myself. Okay, so what I'm saying here is, okay, right. So let's just remember what I'm talking about here. Lingfield 7 race there. Let's see. Lingfield, Newcastle. Yeah, this is the same horse again, by the way. I'm just showing you the same horse here, but on At the Races. I'm highlighting on At the Races. It's actually quite easy to see on At the Races as well, okay? Because you've got everything you need here: the distance, the all-weather. You can see the weight a lot easier, okay? And you can see how it did here. Obviously, you've got the stride data, which we'll talk about after, okay? And then all of a sudden, it wins those 2 races. And then you can see it quite clear as well. So I'm just showing you a comparison with At the Races, how you look at it on there versus Timeform. I mean, I still like Timeform, if I'm honest. I do use At the Races, and I have actually, when I've been posting, apart from today was a fucking nightmare. I didn't actually use anything. I was doing something else. Forgive me if anyone was on those, but they were shit. But if you, I was using the last few days, week, 2 weeks, I've been using my Timeform sheets again in correlation with other things that I do. So it's quite easy when you correlate market with the data. Okay, right. So map it out, I say. So watch your horse start its career and go on an unbeaten run, a bit like this one here, Rock 3. So what I'm going to talk about here very briefly is how a trainer maps out the progression of a horse, a good trainer that manages. So it's like having Eddie Hearn, for example, managing you and getting you shitloads of money as an owner, or as a boxer in his case, compared to, let's say, someone else who can't get you a good gig or gets you a shit deal with Sky or whatever. This one here, it was placed into races that were within its reach. When the OR, when its rating was increased, he used claimers to keep the weight down. So he was managing the penalties by using the claimers. So if we look here, Class 5, 105 came first in a chase, won convincingly by 8 lengths. It was rated 88. It loves heavy, and it had a good jockey, Charlie, on board. So then after, what happens, yeah? It won a 10 rating by 8 lengths. It goes on to another 110, narrowly, but class up, but narrow par higher. It wins that one by another 8 lengths. So it's progressing, this horse, yeah? They pushed it up, the rating, by £9, but still on heavy. But what he did, he had Lucy on board, who offset the penalty, okay? It was also a favourite, by the way. Now, this horse being quite a decent horse now is naturally going to be market favoured in the following. And what did I write here? The Class 2 handicap was interesting as there is no par here. However, the claimer was maintained. Wins the race, as you can see here, by 3 again. On soft ground. All conditions were good, right? Wins again and then drops back. How clever is this? Drops back to the winning par of 110 again, which is obvious it would win. Here it is. So it goes Class 5, Class 4, Class 2, Class 4, pissed it, won by 35 lengths. Conditions spot on. Everything is the same, albeit a few furlongs here and there, but everything's... And this time he's got Hugh Nugent, which is another claimer, and market fave. Now you'll note this horse hardly drifted in play. Okay, strong favourite. Finally, this marvellous unbeaten run makes him fave in a Class 3 handicap. Okay, and now it shouldn't be frowned upon, so to speak, because it won a Class 2, you say, but we've got an actual par here. Okay, it's rated and it's 130. Now, 110 to 130, you've got 115, 120, 120. It's quite a big difference, yeah, in competition. There's only 4 horses, yeah, in this particular race. So you need to look at the field and see which other horses might have a good shout as well. Okay, so par is significantly higher at 130, goes off as fave, increases in OR by quite a bit. So it's gone up 10 pounds now. And now we've also lost the offset here. So he's gone with a more experienced jockey. He's gone with Harry Cobden this time. Okay. To compound the negative, he loses the claiming weight, which is what I was just saying now, afforded to him. So and he subsequently lost by 40 lengths. Now that's a nice lay for someone. Yeah, I mean, there's not that many horses, right, that win 5 on the trot. But when you've kind of like gone from 88 to 122 in the space of, well, that's the end of October, November, December, in the space of what, 4 months. It's a bit much. So that would have been worth looking at the competition. And what would you have been looking for at the competition? You've been looking at other horses that have done very well over maybe course and distance, over maybe the distance, over maybe the par. Now, the par for me would be the most important, and the conditions being heavy. Okay, maybe some history on whether or not the trainer does well or the jockey at that track as well. And that's basically us being detectives. And although you might think this is a long process, okay, I'm going to digress again a little bit. It's really not. The more you do this, you'll literally see it. It takes me longer to add these fucking ticks on here than it does for me to realize what's going on. Because all I'm doing, I'm seeing the green. I'm quickly looking at the par rating, looking at the, I'm not really looking at the odds historically where it was at, but I'm looking at who the jockey was and the result and the par rating and the conditions. And I just quickly go click, click, click on each horse. And then I may go back and shortlist it and have a look at maybe 2 horses, look at the market and see what's going on and then make a decision. It doesn't take me, if it takes me, okay, after a bit of practice, if this takes you more than 10 minutes to begin with, don't do anything and just paper trade. If after a while, it should take about 5 minutes to do. Yeah, and in those 5 minutes, you should have a fairly good idea of what you're going to do and how you're going to play it. You won't be able to do a Saturday race card in the summer because you won't have 5 minutes between races or just about. So the best thing and my best advice to you would be to pick 2 courses with decent races that are going to attract a bit of money. Not massive fields, I'd say up to 12. Yeah, not massive fields like today's. Some of them was quite big. Have a look at some of the races in there and the cards and just work it out. That way you don't need to sit down in the morning and do it. You know, that's just bullshit. What you want to do is sit down at your screen, let's say you've identified 3 or 4 races in that card. You might have half an hour between a race. If you're doing one, you might have 20 minutes or whatever, or you might be doing an evening and an afternoon one. Yeah, but just chill out, because you'll make more money potentially by doing that than, let's say, rushing and trying to get on every single race. You just keep on, it'll mess your head up, and then you just spiral out. And plus you'll lose faith in the whole process, and you'll go back to the bullshit that you were doing before. Okay, so this is an example of how nothing lasts forever, but the market seems to. This is a correlation between how a horse will win and the market will think it's going to win. So what we've got here is, I've just highlighted and ticked how this particular horse at class 4 par rating of 80, narrowly lost here on good to soft. Oh, do you remember what I said to you about good to soft and Kempton? Yeah, I had a go at Kempton at a class 4 par 80, and it won the race, 7 furlongs. Okay, it was rated 80, so it wasn't, I mean, wasn't that far off, because they give you an all-weather rating and a turf rating. It was pushed up to 7 furlongs, so that was actually quite decent. So if you clock this and said, okay, this horse actually likes good to soft, it's in a class, it's class 4, it done well. It didn't do well here for whatever reason. Okay, it was a massive field potentially, maybe a shit position, and so on. But then when it went into slightly smaller field at Kempton, it done very well. So I could have this association of good to soft. I didn't tick it, but definitely here, that deserves a tick. Okay, now they tried to shift it back to turf. Now this horse hasn't done very particularly well on turf, but it's gone to an 85 par now. Last time it did 85 and 90, and 85 it didn't do well. It just about did something nearly here, but came fourth. Here we can see it didn't do well. Not just that, it was in heavy, slow. The market realized that anyway, almost priced it in here at 23. Okay, it went back to Kempton here. Here it is at 85, slightly higher than before. Market had it down at 8.69. It came fourth. You have to note as well that it's actually on all of these occasions, for whatever reason, they put it up to a mile, okay, from the 7 furlongs. So this horse was a 6 to 7. Now we'll go. Okay, so it went to Archie Watson next. Luke Morris here. Then we see an association of Luke Morris coming in. So Archie's got Luke Morris on board. Look what he did here. He went with the 70. He stuck with the all-weather and the 80 par here, and came first 2 times. And he even managed to get him up to a mile next time. Okay, and look at that. It wasn't even that far. It was only, what, a month nearly later. So clearly different trainer, knows how to train horses, maybe particularly well compared to James Given, and thought this was a decent horse to take on and keep him on at the all-weather. We see how it went up to the 95 here, and it failed. And what was the market odds? Now, this is the bit where you wait, okay? And this is quite decent. So if you're looking for horses with green, and you'll see how and map it out and see its journey up through the pars here. Let me just get rid of some of these now, because it's there you go. Right. So we see how it's mapped out its career so far, and how this horse has gone on. We get it only won by half a length there, yeah, and it was dropped back. So the distance is fine. It went up in rating and it went up in par. Okay, and here it's given a favoritism again. You need to look at the rest, and have gone up in class as well. You need to look at the rest. Will this horse perform at class 3? Because there's a big difference between 4 and 3, and especially at 80 to 95 par. Will it perform? There's your false fade. Excuse me while I light my cigar. Takes a 62-day break. Now, what's interesting is after the break, comes back fitter, maybe same kind of distance of 7 furlongs, class 2. You may think there's no par rating, and it's important to add there's no par rating here. Okay, so it's important, once again, kept the same rating here. Market isn't too cruel. Okay, so worth looking at the competition. 4-1. Okay, in an 8 field, and wins that. Now, the reason I wrote this, Nothing Lasts Forever, was specifically for this here. Okay, Midnight Bride, another par example. Progressive 4-year-old filly and likes softer and hard conditions, but the race had better opponents. However, she came third and ran on well considering. Although she was up a little bit on the rating, she was down in weight. Okay, so we can see here, this is basically what I've been talking about before. Okay, you've got the 60, 65 winning in decent fields. That mustn't be, sniggered at. It's decent. Likes heavy and likes good, so it's a decent horse. We've got some consistency here with Kevin Stott. Wins again here as well. Comes back to turf. Conditions are okay. The distance is good. Hasn't been that much. Hasn't gone up that much considering the big break. And the following year, it's a year older now, yeah. And it wins again. And the odds were, it would have been one of the top faves. Now, let's got this. Excuse me one moment. Try and find the. Where is it? Here we go. Just mute all. Yes, thank you very much. I heard someone fart before, so fuck's sake, you can fart, you can shit, do what you like, but let's mute you, yeah. Right, right. We've only got 12 more slides to go, so it won't take that long. Let's just get this hide float. Right, lovely. Okay, so we can see here how it went up again. Now this is the jump in the par. Oh, right. Right, let me just get my pen out. Right, this is the one here, 85 par. That's the one. So if you're looking at this, it's pretty simple. From my point of view, the ground's not a problem, right? Because it can handle heavy. It's the distance is a question mark. It's first time at this distance, yeah. And but for me, this rating would have been the one. Will it be able to win so soon after its last win? Literally what, a couple of weeks earlier, jumping up to 85. It can potentially, but there's good value at those kind of BSP values, yeah. Okay, so here we've just got another example. Oh, okay, so this was, okay, I think we're finishing off with this one. So I actually posted this to you guys, and I said that I used Timeform. If you go to 13th of July at 11 past 8, I posted a lay on these horse. Was it 1 or 2? I can't remember. 1 to win. So I thought, let me post this example just so you don't think, you know, it's all this bullshit after timing bollocks. I actually posted this, and this was how I came to the conclusion. Okay, so I've got all the details there. Remember, I've got my rating, got my class 5. It's a 3-year-old plus, and it's a 1 miler on good ground. Okay, and I believe I said to lay Bobby Dassler and buy the dip. Yeah. And I don't think I said to back this bastard here, but I did say lay these two. I can't remember if I said to back him or if I liked him or whatever. but we can see the odds. So it's a competitive market. So these are the kind of markets that I like to look at. I like to look at competitive markets. Bear with me, just get my pen out. I like to look at prices like this, not these ones, but I'm liking these ones here. It's a competitive race. It's an evening race, which I always like. And I'm going to try and find out which one I believe out of these top three is the least likely to win. So it's as simple or as hard as that. Yeah. Now, by me finding one that's weak or don't expect to win, by default, you would say, or I will say, is that you tend to find others that are quite likely to win. So if I find, oh, 1 minute, I don't think that one and that one will win, but actually these two look quite decent, hence the combination bets. Okay, so Bobby Dassler. What didn't I like about Bobby Dassler? It won a handicap 70 par, okay, by only 3/4 of a length, okay, at a mile. So I've ticked the mile. Daniel Muscat isn't on board today, so I've put an X through that. So the distance is okay, the par's okay. What I didn't like was 2 weeks later, racing at the same par, it was beaten by 10 lengths. Now, Danny Tudhope was on board and it was a favourite, okay? And it just didn't run well at all. And this horse is only, maybe that it, like Nottingham, maybe the race suited it, I don't know. It just, the conditions were the same, the distance was the same. It was only up £3 in terms of rating, but the par for me and the class all the same. So why is it lost by 10 furlong? 10 lengths, I mean. Now, if you look in the past, you see in the past it hadn't really won. It came close, a lower par here. So, yeah, for me, that was, okay, potentially at that kind of price, I might be looking to oppose this. And sure enough, it does. It lost. It was a 5-2 second fave. You can see that most of them were rated pretty similar. Okay. And oh, sorry, this was no, it didn't lose. Sorry, this was the race it lost by it lost previously. And the reason I looked at the previous card or the previous race was I like to read these comments. So it basically was ridden and weakened inside the final furlong. So it's a horse that potentially might go slightly midfield, maybe shadowing front leaders. And the moment it tries to go out wide and overtake, price might drop, for example, or in this case, I don't know, it didn't drop at all. It just weakened inside the final furlong. So the way I'm looking at it is potentially this horse, it might have lost for whatever reason some fitness. It's not exactly the overwhelming favourite, so I'm going to potentially oppose this horse. Now, I'm not going to oppose this horse without looking at the others, or at least the other 2 or 3 horses very quickly. Sometimes I might just look at one horse and it's enough. Sometimes I will look at 2 horses, maybe 3, not more. Okay, so when it won the race, remember this one here, this horse here. Can anyone see or hear anything? Because someone's saying that it's all froze for someone, can't see anything.
Can hear it all, see it all.
Yeah, it's fine for me as well.
Okay. All right. So fine, good. It might be just his internet then, his Wi-Fi or something. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Right. So if we go, we can see Nottingham here, right? And I just wanted to see how it ran in that race. So it made the most, ridden over 1 foot, ran on. Okay. Okay. So something's not right for me. And I'm also noting the reason I've highlighted here, this here, I wanted to see what the competition. Off, Michael. I wanted to see the competition that it was up against. Just get that pen back up. I wanted to see the competition. So when it won this race, it raced at 67. Arguably, it would have been rated maybe actually, maybe you can take a view on this. This may be overrated, and this one, okay, and maybe this one as well. So at best, I'd say that this horse at 67 might have been in the right rating bracket, and these ones might have been higher, because I've got 68, 58, not that far behind, and a 57 even here. Okay, so I'm looking at this and saying, okay, it beat some that were a little bit better, but overall, it was a bit of a poo field. Okay, so I'm looking at Desfondado, whatever, right? It's a 3-year-old. It's unexposed on turf, and it's a 3-year-old plus race, not a 4-year-old plus race. Okay, which I'll talk about later, hence the asterisk. Showed some promise in the previous races, and Paddy on board again, and the market's respecting it. So this particular horse, you can see it won this race. Okay, I've just pulled it up for today, but it won this race. This was the race this horse won. It had Paddy, but if you look previously, I've got Paddy here, Paddy, and they stuck with the guy, and we can see all of a sudden, check the BSPs, how high they are, and all of a sudden we're going down to this price here. Okay, and rating wise, it wasn't going to win this race, was it? At 80. Rating wise, it didn't do too bad here. This is what you've got to look at. This is what your BDI's got to find. At the 70 par race, it didn't do too bad. And I must say at 75 par, wasn't disgraced here either. Bear in mind, it's a little bit less in terms of distance, 8.5 furlongs. Okay. And this is mainly all weather. We've got to take the turf aspect here. So this is our one that we're going to go on. Right. Yeah, it's your connection, David. Don't worry, you're going to get the video if you can't see. Or here. Okay, so this one potentially, it's going to offer us something to think about, and it's a 3-year-old improver. Today's race. Okay, so this was the card. Okay, based on today's race. Okay, so we've got the other horses. Remember, this was a 67 when it won last time. The other horses are consistently closer to 70. Okay, so probably on a decent match with Bobby Dassler. Okay, in terms of competition. The one outlier is By the Dip. Now, the outlier in the sense that we've got these quite top weight horses at the top, Bobby Dassler being the top weight. And also the other thing is, does Bobby Dassler really need cheek pieces? So remember, it lost that race by 10 lengths. They're probably thinking the horse needed something else, a little bit extra, and they've added cheek pieces on. We don't know that horse is going to like cheek pieces. Okay, or, is it going to react at all to them? The other thing is, when you look at the weight and the rating side, you look at the outlier there, which is clearly By the Dip, and you look at the fact that it won a race 2 races ago. You have to look at that market again and say, where's By the Dip? By the Dip is actually second fave in the market. So that looks quite ominous to me. Now, it could be a false fave based on that information that I've just seen. I've got horses that are running that have done well before at decent par rating, and I've got By the Dip, which has obviously gone up a class or so, okay, and hence the lower weight. But the market likes it, so I can't really ignore it, but I'm going to be looking at the market. Now, this is By the Dip, this. Right, so I've highlighted the class win and surface. Not great on turf. And weight from even but same class, false fave, question mark. It's also a 3-year-old, so that's the other thing. Again, like the other horse, it's a 3-year-old, so it's still progressing. It actually dropped to 1.43 in play. Okay, in the race, it dropped to, so it did actually well. So the market had it right, in fact, because it done very well. But when you look at this here, the form, in June. Class 5 handicap, same weight. So when I said this is even, it's the same weight. So it was actually a little bit more, I believe, but it was no, it was 8.7, was it? Forgive me. Yeah, 8.7. It was still running at the same weight as before in a class 5. Had won a class 6, albeit on all weather, a decent weight there, so it was respected at favourite. So not a shit horse, has got some promise, but if you look at the turf side of things, class 4, class 4, class 5. Note the weight, note the weight, note the weight. And again today, getting better on turf, arguably here. Okay, market didn't like it, but I'm not really feeling it, because although it's got some potential, and maybe later on, maybe it was too lowly rated as well at 57. The market knew something clearly, but for me, I could do two things. I actually said laid by the dip as well, but I think Bobby was the first one that I said, but I then said lay that one also. Now, this is important. I very much like to look at a lot of information. I call it confluence, okay? Just like when a couple of rivers come together and meet to make one massive one. I like to get all the data that comes together and meets and get to one outcome, or an ideal synopsis as to what's going to happen, okay? So it just adds to the bias, if you like, and creates a stronger narrative for the decision. Obviously, nothing's 100%, but I call it race profiling. And this is what this is all about. This is race profiling. Now, it was Georgia Dobby that was on by the dip. So I wanted to see, why is this 57 handicap horse priced at this? What's going on? Let me see where Georgia ranks. Well, Georgia, funny enough, that was the first race she'd ever had on that horse. Now, I would expect the trainer to maybe have gone with Pat, Luke, Charlie, or any of these ones, yeah, in the top here, but didn't. It went instead with Georgia Dobby. So for me, that was like, okay, not maybe as optimistic, and is given Georgia a go for some reason. So for me, hence the decision to lay. And this is how it went. Desfondado came first as a second fave. Dassler 4 3/4 length behind, and by the dip a little bit left. And by the dip, obviously dropped quite well. Bobby Dassler likes to run out the front. Yeah, he led. He was leading, ridden 4 lengths clear when he was 2 furlongs out, and headed over 1 furlong. He tried to rally again, and he was headed towards the finish. Okay, so I believe that was a decent low lay as well. So yeah, not bad at all. Managed to get those two correct. So when handicapping, and when we combine spell check, when we combine backs, Dutching along with lays, or simply, so yeah, you can combine your backs with lays, or you can just keep it simple, guys, and just do later back if you want. Do you know what I mean? Until you're confident. I mean, I'd even say paper trade. Yeah, or use additional horses as rather than laying. So I said before on the channel, rather than laying, you might want to consider having 3 horses in a Dutch. Yeah, so instead of laying a horse at 1 point at price of 4 and backing 2 other ones, should that one win, then obviously you're a little bit fucked over. So you might want to maybe take a slightly smaller, rather than getting a bigger prize, maybe slightly smaller, more consistent. So think of Dutching as a form of a hedge, rather than decreasing your profit. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is Desfondado, or let's just call him Des, all right? Who rode Des? Fucking Paddy. Now, another thing to note. Remember Paddy? Paddy was one of his jockeys, not completely successful for him, but he was one of his top 8 horses, 2, 4, 6. Yeah, his 7th best jockey, or in terms of runs given to him. He didn't give him the run. Okay, now maybe it's not a fantastic example, but he's placed in 6 races out of 22 for him. Okay, he does tend to use him. You would argue he would have used one of these guys, but instead this geezer went on to ride the winner instead. Joe Fanning. Has he got Joe Fanning on his books? No. Okay. Right, so we go on. Right, frequent flyer. I'll answer them. Anyone got any questions, post them up. I'll answer them in a minute. Frequent flyer, could have opposed this too. A good example of how the handicappers screwed this one up as well. Overrated horse that has been dropping, and we'll have to go to class 6 to see if he can compete. That's my opinion, obviously. Yeah. So let me just get this pen out. Okay. Now, look at this. Oh, get that pen out. Sorry, for some reason. There you go. Right. The handicapper put here this one opening mark at 80. Yeah. Based on the performances before, came second here, second in class 5 and class 4. Decided to handicap this horse at 80. Failed here. Had a long break, came back, still at 80. Class 5. Failed here. Check this out. Check that out. Something's wrong with this horse, obviously, or it's running in the wrong company. Lowered it as a result. Class 4. Failed. Another little break. We got it now at running in a class 4 still. They're trying the visor this time. Still loses. Joint fave this time. And now it's running at 70. It's fucked. It's still lost. Yeah, in a class 5. Okay, so not great. This horse will end up going down to a class 6 if it's going to probably win, or there's just something wrong with this horse and it needs some attention, or it needs to be binned. Salami. Okay, so joking. So next one here. Well, it's the same one here, just to show you the pars, so you can see it from a different angle. Okay, so you can see this here, right? Can see on the Timeform comparison with the pars. Okay, it went from 80, 85, 70, still shit. Had decent jockeys also. So to say it's the jockey or anything like that, no. So you can see here we had Rob, David, the Sheen here, David and Joshua Bryan, and we can see from the stakes. Yeah, it was then given its 80 rating here, 85 and 70. Okay, and still nothing. Market only ever fancied it here. That would throw you a little bit, but being the favourite here, but on heavy ground as well. No chance. Terrible. Terrible. So that was that's something to keep an eye on as well. Okay. Right, has anyone got any questions? That's the end of the Timeform stuff. Very simple. Hopefully I've explained it well enough for you guys. Has anyone got any questions to ask? Yeah, correct. Right, so let's start with Tom C. Would you lay at, say, 1.4 on 2 and put a back bet to that on 4, for example, or do you lay a number of horses? Okay, so execution. I always seek to get some value. Now, depending if a horse is starting out at evens or 3 odds, I will probably drip back to evens and lower potentially. If a horse is at 4+, I will, depending on the field size, I may lay in play at 3 if I see it struggling to drop, but I would also have my drips a little bit lower as well, to 1.5 and so on. Okay, so yeah, and also you can do the opposite, by the way. If there's a horse that you fancy or you think a horse might do well, if you're going to do a later back, for example, and you're laying at using software, of course, that's the only way you can do this. If you're laying at if you're leaving a lane at 1.5 or 1.4 or lower, you're going to put off your offset and bat angel on a percentage. Okay, so you're going to lay at 1.4 and you might put a 50% offset, or you might exit obviously once you match, kill and green up at 1.8, for instance, or 2 and 2.5 or 2 and 3 or whatever. Now that's if you want to hedge, or you can basically not hedge it and just leave a free bet. So then you're creating so sometimes I say later back on this fave, but scratch it because I expect it to win, and you're effectively leaving a free bet on that horse. Okay. Now Mark asks if I how would this help in scalping? Okay, so it's quite simple, really, Mark and everyone. It's if you find a horse that you think is not going to win, based on the stats that we've just looked at now and these par ratings, if you've identified a horse that is a false fave, you will wait in the market and you will at the right time. So it tends to be the last 5 minutes, 2 minutes even, and sometimes the last minute. If a horse has been overbacked, but you believe that this is a false fave based on that, it will drift, and people will start laying at the value price. They're not going to lay at the high price, which is why you get the manipulation when it comes to scalping. So that and then the other thing is you've got all the people that are all the casual scalpers, let's say, which is, let's say, the vast majority of us, for example. They're all following a trend. Yeah, or some have got bots, and our friend Mr. Webb, we might highlight one as well, just before he probably puts a back on it, and highlights a horse that's dropping, and many people start to jump on it as well and start chasing the trend. The bots are going, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, you know, it's being laid, and it's going against everyone. People are starting now. What causes it to drift? It's people starting to cash out or basically try and catch up with their red, and that's what causes the spike up. Okay, so people are sucked in. The same goes when you find a horse that you think is going to win, because one of the horses obviously got a trend going down. There's obviously another one maybe going the other way, which was maybe opening range would have been around about 3 and 4, but then it's drifted out to 6s. That presents good value, yeah, because when it opened in the market, it was, let's say, 3 to 4 odds. It's drifted out to 6 to 7, and all of a sudden that represents, actually, do you know what? Thank you very much. I'll take that. Now, if you've identified that horse at those odds, which are extremely good value, and it's got a chart now in the scalping, people will start backing that horse because it's got great value. So it's the same. So you've got the lays and you've got the backs. And that's something you would take advantage of, because just to summarize what I just said, because the sharp money always comes in the final minutes. Everyone else just pisses about. They throw you around like a rag doll. The clever money comes in later, and we get a good idea of what's going to happen, basically. Okay, and those people and those stats that we've looked at today, they tend to play out like that. So if you keep the faith and you wait until the very last minute to go against that trend that you're trying to scalp, you will get out with some profit. Now, if you've gone in too early or too late, then my advice would be to keep on drip backing, or keep on drip laying and not lose the faith. Yeah, at some stage you might bottle it because you think, oh, I'm losing too much here. But when you're drip backing or drip laying, all you're doing is you're laying your average entry point, and therefore the drop or the drift only has to be quite minimal in order for you to profit. Providing you've got 60 seconds left, which will happen, you could, goodness me, I mean, I've dobbed, we some of the selections, my selections have dobbed, and maybe more sometimes in a matter of what, 60 seconds, especially on greyhounds as well, actually. But it's on horses as well. You know, they'll reach a pinnacle, and then all of a sudden they come down to meet the opening odds. Yeah, because there's some value there, and people were just concentrating on some false favourite, being duped into following that. And that's how you'd use this kind of data that we're looking at today. Does that answer your question, Mark? Would any of the information you've shown make you change your... Okay, cool. Would any of the information you've shown make you change your mind last minute? And if so, what are they? If you pay me $2 grand and join my private mentoring, I might let you know what those things are. That's all I can say there. You know, this is handicapping. You've only paid 49 quid. So basically, when I'm looking, so yeah, sometimes, joking aside though, sometimes I will change my mind because I might have noticed something interesting on the cards, or something that I just quickly neglected to look at when I was scanning, and I might think, actually, no, I'm not gonna, you know, I prefer this one, maybe go with this one instead. Yeah, it might have been that I've just seen that the trainer jockey combo, or the trainer's background history at that course, or a horse par rating, for example, has gone off, or the ground, something. I might have missed something, and yeah, I will change my mind. Listen, when you trade, if you can't be flexible, and you're going to be completely biased and be completely following your bias and not willing to change, which is an ego problem within yourself, or maybe complacency and being lazy to just double check things sometimes, then more for you. You need to always be ready to adjust and change your mind. I mean, don't basically get married to your decision, all right, and get out. It's the same as it's not the same as cutting your losses in, right? I mean, I never really cut my losses in play. So, you know, I'll take the full loss and I'll take the full win. You know, if I set my exits, you know, I leave it at that, you know, that's it. But I'll never read out. I don't care. That was my decision, and I'll stick by that. Before, but the decision to cancel before play, yes, I will always maybe change my mind. I don't like doing it, and I don't do that often, if I'm honest. But when I'm looking at a race and it takes me 1 minute to come, or less, to come up with the winner or the loser or the combination, then yeah, it's a thing. Anyone else got any questions? Right. So what we'll do now, we'll have a quick break before I go on to the next one, which will be the stride data. Okay, so we'll start with the sectional timing and stride data. It's 11:51. I'm just going to literally, if you want to go to the loo, make yourself a coffee or something, I'm just going to go and reload on the coffee myself, and I'll be back by midnight to start the second section. Whoever wants to go to sleep, no problem. I'm just going to carry on talking to myself. Whoever wants to stay and ask some questions and get involved, then by all means, hang around. So just take a quick break, and I'll see you in 10 max. Right, so I'm gonna crack on now with the rest. This will probably go on for a while as well, probably at least an hour or so. Right, so sectional timing and stride data, how to effectively use this data to profile a race or an individual horse. Okay, so stride data notes. Okay, great for a truly run race, or races rather, which is sprints. Okay, Newcastle's a really good ground for that because it's a straight. Long distance stride is important as opposed to cadence. So what you got is you got the stride length of a horse as opposed to the cadence. Cadence being the frequency. So how often does the horse actually, or how fast does the goodness me, it's getting late and getting mind block. Does a horse stride, if you like, or frequency, if you like, stride frequency, measured in per seconds. Cadence and stride will diminish with age as gait extension lessens and horses. Now, the stride will diminish maybe, cadence not so much. What does happen when the horse becomes a little bit older is sometimes it's stamina, so it becomes a little bit slow with age, yeah, because of its breathing, or if it needs a wind operation, sometimes that's another reason. So, but the gait of a horse and the length of the stride tends to diminish. Simple calculation. Okay, so to calculate the speed, if you like, of a horse, you just literally take the two. Okay, so you'll take the stride and you times it by the frequency, and then it will give you more or less its speed. Now we'll talk about that later. It says so I just take the average personally. So you can take an average sometimes and take into account certain courses will change these numbers. For example, you've got undulating courses, you've got uphill, you've got downhill, and obviously how many bends and so forth. And then you've got jumps as well. Okay. Long distance, no, long distance, yeah, over, yeah, we're talking over a mile, yeah, Tom. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more for 12 furlongs, 16 furlongs, that kind of thing. All weather courses are, in my opinion, really strong to compare because the conditions are very similar, and most horses that run all weather will have run at Newcastle, Southall. We haven't got the stride data, unfortunately, because TPD haven't got rights at Chelmsford and Kempton, but you've got Newcastle, Wolverhampton, Lingfield, and Southall. So at least there's 4 courses that we can look at there. So the pace of a race can affect those numbers. So if a horse if the pace of a race starts really strong, then it will affect the actual stats compared to maybe last time. Because if the pace goes really fast to begin with, then the jockey or the field might slow down in the middle and maybe quicken towards the end, or just slow down completely. Yeah. It's a great indicator for outsiders as well as favourites, so for laying and backing. So if you're looking at a field and you've had a quick look at the data, in terms of you've done a quick multiplication, you think 1 minute, and you've looked historically at a horse and you think, okay, they've raced at Newcastle here before, and they've raced at Southall and today, and they've raced at Wolverhampton, and looking at the frequency, it's all around about 2.45 in terms of frequency, and the length is 25, so it's pretty even throughout. Now, you take that as a very loose measurement, but normally it's a good benchmark. Obviously, the price, as you know, if it's backed well in the market, it may be that it's well fancied for some reason. But as you've seen already, you can also identify a false fave. If you find one all of a sudden that's got a really strong stride data on it, you might want to look at the history of that horse, and you might find that it hasn't raced maybe for a while at that course. or it's had some poor results on turf and all of a sudden it's gone back to all weather, and it might be priced around about your 12, 16 odds, that actually might be a decent back to lay or each way bet even. Okay. From the scalping perspective, right, you will find that these kind of horses with decent ratings are found out before post time, and you might see them, or wouldn't be surprised to see them getting backed. Okay. Sectional data, which I'll go into, which is part of obviously the stride data. It's just a subtitle, if you like, subcontext of the whole stride data. The sectional data is how a horse runs, let's say from 8 to 7 furlongs or 3 to 1. I mean, now we see them in breakdowns of every furlong and how it tackles. So, I mean, if you hear a commentator say, oh, they've just done it in 30 seconds, for example, the first 3 furlongs or whatever, and obviously that might be something that if you know about the stride data, you'll understand that that section, they're mentioning that because it was run too fast. And if it's run too fast, it means that if you know which horse is a pace setter or which one likes to stay back, maybe that might give you actually a good indication of what's going to happen in that race. So you need to look at why a horse has won with lower stride data than another. All right, so this is where you need to dig a little bit deeper, because the data supplied is for the fine. Sometimes it used to be anyway. It might be for a long race for the last 8 furlongs, 9 furlongs. They're not going to give you the whole 2 miles, for example. You only sometimes get the data broken down. But sometimes, like I say, depending, I have noticed this is changing somewhat. Unfortunately, total performance data are a bunch of so-sos, and I was hoping that they would release this kind of data in a format which could be manipulated a lot easier. So if you could imagine incorporating that kind of data in a racing bet data set, that would be amazing, and you'd be able to filter that a lot better. But unfortunately, I think they were thinking, when I was in discussions with them about maybe releasing that kind of data as a suggestion, the guy that I was talking to was put on a different project, and but he was actually hopeful that they might be doing this and selling that data. I think they've missed a trick there, because they would have done well with that. At the same time, however, by selling that data, it kind of like means that I think what they did do instead was they amalgamated it, or they had it on as a bolt-on with BetAngel instead, and they got the punter involved and the fastest fingers looking at the whole scenario, where people get burnt when they get caught just because they think the horse is starting to pick up speed. Anyway, digress. The data given is at a glance, is the peak average, as it's called. Okay, so what you need to be a little bit wary of is, what if their peak was short-lived? So if I'm looking at a horse with a stride data of 60 after I've multiplied the 2, right, and it lost, but there was a horse with slightly lower stride data that won, why did that happen? And you need to look a little bit, which is again what we'll look at and see how, because a horse can peak at a certain point, then it will tire, and the data that's given to us at the races is the peak average. And when you actually look a little bit deeper, you'll see that dropping off very sharply, or that it only hit that peak very early on and then it was downhill from there on. An evenly run race, you would have heard about this. So an evenly run race is when the pace is pretty steady. Okay, this will usually provide the optimum efficiency for a horse to run at, and you will get the sectional times pretty consistent throughout. So a horse, that is the The optimum efficiency, every course, just so you know, has a racing part. Okay, so every horse has a style and a time for each section, and it basically concludes that for a horse to win, it would have to run at this level throughout the race, and then and if it runs faster than that, then obviously they'll change the par at that course to a new rating if a horse happens to beat that and runs a lot better. But each course does that, and that's where they compare the peak average and all of that type of thing, which we're going to look at. Horses may exert, let's get the laser on. Oh, I've got to say. Right, so horses may exert more to begin with or at the end, okay, may have this as an inherent behavioural pattern. So yeah, so you've got the horses, which I discussed earlier, you've got horses, this is all down to pace. Some horses, and jockey, some horses will run fast to begin with, or maybe the jockey's trying to do that. But then there's horses that are basically sat at the back and they're weighted with, as they say, and then they close. Kempton's a fantastic course for closing. There's loads of others obviously, but Kempton's amazing. So the longer the running towards the end, it suits these kind of horses that like to accelerate and pounce at the end. Note horses that run differently to the norm and under a different jockey. So I've mentioned this already when I mentioned AtThe, for example, who likes to front run with some of his horses. Okay, and also note, as I said before, if a horse is running differently to previous races, it might be that all of a sudden this horse is leading or trying to front run, whereas previously it's failed by sitting in the back. And how many horses, you will note from a video, how many horses the jockey left it too late to come out from the pack or got stuck. And by the time it tracked out tracked out wide, it just wasted valuable energy and seconds and got caught and couldn't close in time. So all of these kind of things will affect, and hence why you need actually a very good overview of how the previous races panned out. Okay, so we'll take this example and look at the top three to the race in order to establish what to expect. Okay, so we're familiar now with at the races. So you've got the top two faves, and then you've got the 15-2 odds, New York State of Mind. So you've got Nelson Gay. Obviously, this is the result, yeah. Nelson Gay, Dandy, Dinmont, and New York State of Mind. They're the two top faves here. And then you've got 15-2 New York State of Mind. Now, we don't need to worry about all of this. We're not talking about all of that. You can do your research on this anyway and see how the horse is. We're just interested right now with the stride data. Okay, so the third place horse, New York State of Mind, we can see that the stride data is quite consistent. So if we take his last Newcastle outing, it's 24.1 and stride length and 2.45 the frequency. Okay, so where are we? Here we go. That's that one there. That's what I've just done the calculation. Now, if we look at the similarities, obviously different. So this is what I mean. You've got Brighton, which is downhill towards the end. So this will be a little bit different. So if we look at, let's say, Wolves here, 2.46 isn't that dissimilar to where it ran at Newcastle. And 24.63 is not that dissimilar from that there as well. Okay, and then if we look at another Wolves as a comparison, so what was I showing? So I was showing you Bath instead of this one. Sorry, my eyes. Sorry, this was a 5 furlongs, but again, 2.46, 23.9. Let me find this one here. 24.4, very similar to that, and 23.9 there as well. Okay, so it's pretty consistent. Now, I'll take that because we're looking at Newcastle today. I'll take that, even though it was a while ago, almost. but I looked at the April 23. It wasn't that dissimilar, but it was at Wolves. Wolves being different to Newcastle because you've got the bends there as well, as opposed to a straight. And I'll discuss the flame after as well. Okay, so that's the rating that I've taken. If you want to be really pedantic, it's a long way of doing it. You take an average of the whole lot, but that you're not going to get a true picture. Like I say, it depends what the pace was and all that type of thing and the tracks. So just take the same kind of course, or as near as damn it, the distance and the conditions of the surface being all weather, or being where a Bath offers it, for example. And if he's racing at Bath again, you can see that the cadence here is pretty similar. Okay, and not far off of the straight. The stride length rather. So we've got here 59.045. If you wanted to note these things as well, it's a class 4, class 5 kind of horse, even class 6 sometimes. Yeah, this was a class 3 here last time, a year ago now, nearly. Dandy's the course that finished second. So again, we can see it won at Newcastle. So obviously from a handicapping perspective, we'll be looking at that as a positive. We can see here the stride data here, even to fast. And then we've got another 2 here. So it likes Newcastle, narrowly lost here and here. Okay, and class 3, class 4, class 5. So it's an improving horse. It went up in weight, wasn't really phased, came close, and it's got very good stride data here. So if we do the multiplication, it comes out at 60.03. Okay. And if we go to the winner, Nelson Gay, we look at Newcastle 5 furlongs, lost by a couple of furlongs here, yeah, in a class 3. Okay. Connor Beasley I've ticked because he's the same jockey today. And I'll talk about this shortly, but we note the stride data. Okay. Now, the thing is, we look here, it's not that far apart, and that's on 6 furlongs good to firm. Yeah. So it's pretty strong, even here at Wolves with the bends, remember. And here it's even better still at Doncaster. Right. Sorry. Okay. So, and this one gives us a 60.17. So it's marginally better, but margins win. Okay. Now, the flame tells us that he closed here in his previous race where he lost. It tells us that he closed towards the end of the race and ran the race above average towards the finish. So it's promising in the sense that he may have been hindered. Maybe the jockey couldn't produce, and when he did get something out of the horse, the horse gave such a strong finish that potentially it lost that race and it was hard done by, and the result doesn't really reflect the actual potential of that horse, and to keep note of it maybe next time. So when you see a flame, I always say to people, note it's a good indication of keeping it somewhere in the diary, or even if you're having a quick look when you're doing the handicapping, if you see the stride data and if you see the flame next to it, note the distance, note the class, and maybe note the fact that this horse is very near to winning very soon. And now if you look below here, it ran quite well here. It lost marginally, but it ran quite well in a class 4, good to firm. And then on its next time out, it won, yeah, in a class 3 at Wolves. Okay, so, and it was favourite. So maybe that's not a coincidence. Okay, so bear that in mind. Now, what I will say is, just because it's got a flame here, I would always say, well, apples and pears, basically. I'd always say stick to the same kind of conditions. So, for example, our race today that we're looking at is at Newcastle, and previously this happened at Newcastle. So I would say keep a note next time this horse is running at Newcastle, because it might actually do better next time. Okay. And we can see obviously that this horse won Nelson Gay, as you can see, won by a head, and New York State of Mind a neck behind Dandy. Okay, so it was all very, very close. Okay, but then if you look at the figures that I gave before with Dandy and Nelson, they were very close, 60.17 and 60.03. There's nothing in it. Right, so let's load the card and we'll scan this race and briefly analyze. Load card. Okay, let me load the card. Let me just have a quick look quickly as to what I've got coming up. Yeah, okay, cool. So let me get this up now quickly and bring it over the screen. 30th of June. Results. Bear with me, I'm just loading it up, guys. Now, from a card perspective, okay, you can see this 75 3-year-old plus race, okay, and it's 5 furlongs. So if you go into Nelson Gay quickly, you'll see, surprise, surprise, this horse has been running at 85, 90, 85, 95, 105, even one at Wolves in a class 3. So this is actually a really, 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 really decent horse in terms of where it's been and narrowly lost in the past. Form-wise, you can see it started off at Newcastle at 95, lost slowly here. Let me just get my I've got the, I can't highlight it, but it doesn't matter. Connor Beasley's ever present here throughout, and we can see that actually, Jesus, that's a really good price, 8.22. Okay, and you can see that his form in terms of on turf, at least, he was getting a little bit better here. So 75 to drop to 75 from 95, that's a massive value price, if I'm honest. And based on the stride data that I just gave you, it would have been a fantastic back to lay each way or place bet. Okay, now if we look at where are we? Let me just go back to, why is that? Come on, Mike, where is it? Dandy Dinmont. Dandy Dinmont here. You've got one at Newcastle at 75, yeah, and then obviously it's been pushed up in the pars. You can see came close at Newcastle. So listen, 85 and 95, it's not scared of it, and it's Faye that's been ever present on this horse in the past. Just so happens on the 30th of June, narrowly lost by a head. Phil Dennis has been on this horse. So again, something to look at. It hit 1.22 low. Based on what I've just seen, I mean, yeah, again, this would have been a back to lay potentially. I wouldn't particularly have laid this horse, or it would actually have served as a really good Dutch bet at 4.65 with the other one being so close. So rather than trying to pick a losing one, why not just back them both? Yeah, and you would have come out trumps anyway. Now then, if I look at New York State of Mind, this would have been maybe a decent lay. So we can see that this horse was something before, has been lowered quite a bit in the handicaps. Did okay in the 75, but compared to the other horses' pars and form, on this track. I would have gone against it. It actually, where are we? Newcastle came third here. Didn't particularly drop in play either. So it would have been quite easy to pick those two horses as a Dutch overall. Right. So so that's that card loaded. Before I move on, has anyone got any questions? No one? No one left? 13 people left. Bless you. No questions? Everything clear so far? Anything at all to add? What do you mean, do I find timing better, Tom? Can you just elaborate? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? It's a little bit generic. A straight course, yeah, because you've got no bends, it's going to be quite a, it's a sprint. So it's, I suppose, imagine 100 meters. Imagine 100 meters with a bend in it when you're running it as a human. It's not going to be as fast as a straight because you can't run the bend in the same way. Yeah. So that if that's what you mean, then a straight course. Yeah, cool. And there's not that many straight courses really. Okay. Right, cool. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show you this bar here. This is the bar that you need to be looking at. So whenever there's stride data available at a course, you will see this at the top, and you'll click on those. And when you click on those, for example, you'll come with the sectional timings, for example, one of the tabs. This is what I was talking about before. So the colors have a meaning. They're from bottom to left. From the bottom left here, you can see where it's, the faster it is, the deeper the red is, and the lighter the green, the colder or towards blue aqua, the slower it gets, or green rather, the slower it gets. Okay, so it's just a heat map of how it ran the race, and then you've got the seconds for each furlong and how it ran. You can see that this pace was really fast here on this particular, not on this race we just saw, but on a random race now. And because of the pace, most of the horses just took off. Yeah, they kind of like, we'll all go at the same pace to begin with. And some of those horses don't like it. And those horses that front run, for example, most of the race tend to slow down and get tired. As you can see, this one here, only 13.9 seconds in the final furlong, compared to, let's say, this one here that came second by only a neck, 12.49. So you can compare that, and you can see how the race was ran, and whether or not it's typical of that particular horse. I'm not overly interested in this. I sometimes look, I mean, normally it's in the text. So for example, look, you might not be able to see this, but it was towards the, it says here, it was towards the rear, ridden, and it was, it went close, it just couldn't quicken, literally the last few strides, if that. Okay, whereas Liberated Lad, it raced wide, close up, ridden to lead towards finish, and it found a little bit extra when asked. Okay, so it kind of like tells you and explains more or less how this race finished up, but it gives you also a good idea of front runners and historic. But honestly, I can't say I look at the sectional timings tab that much, really. Okay. Section tools. Section tools is just here, so you'll find it in the bar above there. Section tools. On this page, you can see some tools, measurements. So what it is, it'll give you an understanding of how efficient the horse ran, which is what I was talking about before, and where the energy was expended during the race, and that's when it's, so the yellow line is the park. I'm going to show you this, it's not on here for some reason, and the blue line is how the horse ran. So I'm going to show you this now, bear with me. For some reason these slides aren't showing, so I'm just going to pull up the card with some stride data on. I could find one. Let's let me bring this over here. Okay, so chamber, right, so here we go. These are the sectional times, sectional tools, what I was talking about before. And you can see the blue line, can you see the blue line's consistent? That's the par rating of if you like, the most efficient, the horse that runs the most of that particular course at Wolves. The horse that runs at that course and distance at that closest to that blue line will win the race. So it was quite close to the top two, as you can see, and you can marginally see here in yellow, you can see the energy distribution and so on. Not that you're going to, I want you to focus on that, but you can see that this particular horse was just below that optimum. Yeah, and then what it did, whereas this one kind of like went above it, so, and followed that line and then went over it and then dipped at the end, whereas this one carried on a little bit more consistent above the blue line. What does that tell me? It tells me that this particular horse saved a little bit of energy to begin with, and then it quickened and it kept going, right? Now, again, I'm just letting you know what this is. I'm not telling you to look at this. I don't want you to really look at this. I want you to look at the following. These boxes here, the sectional speed, miles per hour. Now, what I want you to see is, we know that this race started fast here based on this telling us, and also the red at the beginning for the first furlong or so. And you can see the time, sorry, the miles per hour, sorry, how fast the horse went at the beginning. And then you can see if the horse slowed down at in the middle. And then you can see which horse slowed down or went faster or maintained the speed rather towards the end. Now, most horses, depending on the distance, sprints anyway, they do start 5 furlongs, they do start faster at the beginning. Okay, and they slow down towards the end. The only reason you think there's a horse that's getting quicker most of the time is because the other ones are slowing down and they're just getting overtaken by another horse that isn't really going faster. It's just maintaining its speed. So that's something to take into account. Now, it's important to note this as it could be a characteristic of the horse, that it always tends to slow towards the finish. So I might look at a horse and compare it to another horse, and I might see that a horse will quicken at the end, go a bit slow in the middle because they hold back, and then they go really fast and finish strongly. Now, if you look at the finish on this one here, the race finished 97.3, and this was above that average there, okay? And then this one's got the flame on it. Remember the flame? This one's finished stronger than the race finish itself, which means that this horse has got some potential because it maintained an even pace, and it kind of like went a little bit, it went slower like all the others, but it finished stronger than some towards the end, which means that there may be a little bit more for this horse to give. So, for example, if had Royal Mariner started the race a little bit faster, it may have had a little bit more to give towards the end. Okay, just saying. So it's something to look at when you're looking at that list. Where is it gone? Right, so if I go into the stride data now, which is the main one I look at, This is the main thing. So here it is. This is the main thing. So I've got my average, which I see highlighted on the side. Yeah, but it's my peak average. This is what I mean. So what is the peak average? Look, if you hover over this, it will say your peak average. Here it is. Peak average at 2.46. Stride frequency 255. Yeah, and then if we go down, we can see the stride is still 246, and then it hits this line at 3 furlongs, and it starts to slow down. But how much? It's still close to the line. It's only in the last final furlong that it's slowed down. Yeah. So what is it? 2.43, 2.36. The peak average was 2.46. It was only in the last furlong it dropped to 2.36. Now look at its competitor. It started off at 2.43, and then it averaged out to 2.34, and then you can see 2.32. It finished for the majority for the last 3 furlongs. So this one maintained a better frequency. Stride wise, you can see the same. It picks up and it peaks at 24.96, which is here. But look, it didn't stay long, did it? Look, it was for the first For the first sprint, basically. Where is it? And after 2 furlongs, the stride length starts to drop. Now, the stride length started to drop, but also the cadency or the frequency became quite stagnant. It never quickened, basically. If anything, it slowed down because its stride went down and its frequency just remained the same. Whereas this one, it was up here at 24.19. It dropped to 22.15, but it was very late in dropping the frequency. So what can you tell from that? You can actually see that this horse, the winner, Chamber Quiet, was actually a deserved winner, even though it only lost by a shoulder. It held on to its frequency quite well. Whereas if I look at this one here, and I times this one, for example, it might give me a better reading than something else here, but it doesn't give me the whole story, because I can see that this horse, why did this horse finish lower than this one but has better stride data, for example? It's because the frequency drops off. It doesn't maintain it for a long while. Okay. Now, sometimes it could be because the jockey done a crap job, because if you see this particular horse, Glory Call, it holds its stride length quite well. Okay. But it just can't hold its frequency. Now, was that because it was stuck somewhere? It couldn't get out, boxed in, you know? Now, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll watch the replay. That's what we'll do. And we'll have a look at that Glory Call out of interest.
They're asking about pretty good level break. Glory Call as well there, the red cap, and also on the inside gap.
Glory Call's at the front there, you can see.
Another one embracing the front leads the Rasmus and these stripes, and also the maroon and pink. Pink stripes is in the front rank, and definitely outside is Chamber Quiet and the pink and yellow. They're well bunched just behind the leader. Is Noble Captain in the blue, white, and yellow. The brown cap next to Nap and the green colours, the flying party. Back marker is Royal Mariner. And all in two in the hoops towards the rear of the main group with the Band Star and Nap and Lee. They're swinging the left-handed out, passing the halfway point. And the Rasmus against the fence, and it's first-time blinkers. Is disputing it with Chamber Quiet. Pink stripes.
Oh, it's a bit boxed in there. He's the jockey's obviously going for it there, but he can't get out either. If anything, he's ridden him too early anyway.
And then also towards the far side, Noble Captain, the blue, white, and yellow finish as well. But Chamber Quiet is the one to catch as they come there well inside the final furlong. About 3 parts of a length clear of Noble Captain, but Noble Captain is finishing very strongly, and there's little between them at the line. Chamber Quiet and Noble Captain.
Okay, so Glory Call was interesting. Now you'll note that the one that came second, Chamber Quiet, the way he was closing towards the end. Now, when you look at the history of it, and you're looking at another race coming up, and you look at Noble Captain, rather, that came second, not Chamber Quiet, Noble Captain, you'll think, okay, have a look at the race, because you'll see that maybe Noble Captain had a better chance, or had a good chance to win that, had that jockey maybe have pushed a little bit earlier, or it got into a better position, and maybe one to watch in the next race. A lot of people remember me from when I was doing the US races during COVID, and the way I would handicap them was literally using stride data where available, or actually reading just the comments and watching the last race on video to see how the horse ran and whether or not it showed some potential in the following race, to see how if it front ran. Now I can see that Glory Call isn't really suited to a fast pace, and it got tired in the middle, yeah, and it dropped off quite early when it was pushed. So really, should it have gone to the front? It just wouldn't have kept up with the pace that was set by those horses. So a slower run or an even pace race might suit that horse next time. Okay, so this is just a chart. It's actually quite decent. It's good to print this off and have it as a guide by your PC when you're trading, because it gives you an instant idea until you kind of like get to know it off by heart. Okay, so it gives you a summary of the striding information with handicaps as a comparison, and the figures are for the distance at which horses ultimately proved best, rather than just those that which they were raced. So it gives you an idea of a horse running over 5 furlongs, the average max cadence of 2.54, the average minimum cadence of 2.34, and so on, and the different. And there you've got the. Now it obviously doesn't mention stride, because stride would be a little bit subjective based on the cadence is pretty. The cadence tends to be pretty static. Okay, it's the stride that will alter with the course and the distance and the age of the horse. Whereas so if you look at the average max and minimum cadence, they'll give you a good idea of whether a horse is strong. So if I'm looking at the races, the card, for example, let me just have a look at this again. Just bring this over again. So if I'm looking for a 5-6 furlong 2.54 race, this was a 6 furlong full result. $2.54. I can see this horse does 2.53, 2.46 on. That's what it achieved last time on a 6 furlong. So that's well in the 2.48 is your average. So that's quite decent. Now let's just have a look at some of the other ones. So my memory, I'm tired as shit. 2.48. If I have a look at, let's have a look at Glory Call as we're looking at it. 2.28 at Wolves. Yeah, that's not, it won. Yeah, it won a Class 6 handicap by shoulder. But remember what I just said to you about this particular horse. If it ran an even pace race, it might have a better chance. Now, because it maintains its stride length, that would suit this particular horse. And I didn't know this, but yeah, it won its last race based on that pace rating. And I can tell that from the way the race was run. It wasn't a shit horse. It was just it went too fast and it got tired. Okay. But then when you look at it here, how it ran last time, the stride length was the same as before when it won, and it was forced to go a little bit faster. But it's looking at it in another race in the future, I'll be frowning upon the 2.39 anyway. Yeah, and I'll be looking at the competition quite closely, because as you can see, if there's a horse in the mix that can achieve historically a faster frequency, I mean, this one here, for example, look at this. Oh, right. So Noble Captain that came second actually lost to Glory Call. But here's the thing. When Glory Call won that race, we've got a flame here. Surprise, surprise. Remember the flame. So that would have meant that Noble was a little bit unlucky in this race, and to watch out. And what did I say? Try and keep note of those horses when they're running next time at the same course and distance. So that would have been quite a good each way stroke back to lay bet. Now, what I want to do is, let me just see, Glory Call, where it won this race. I want to watch the actual replay of this race just to see how remember the pace, how the last one started.
And off racing over 6 furlongs.
Noble Captain is with, there's Noble Captain with the blue and yellow cap.
Stripes, and then with the red cap is
Struck gold there.
On the inside, on the outside.
Sorry, good call. Glory Call, rather. Sorry.
Hoops next, then all done. The orange with the stars. Noble Captain towards the back of the field, and Zebedee is the back marking. The fact they rated that mark.
So Noble Captain, right? How he raced last night. He's at the back of the field. So the jockey held him a little bit too late at the back. Too long. The horse wants to go. You can see he's holding him back.
Joined to third by Struck Gold, and then all in 2 on the outside of All Done. The back 2 a Noble Captain as they pass the 3 furlongs.
Nice steady pace. Look at Glory Call. Really comfortable at that pace, yeah? Note how he's only just now going to ask him questions, whereas before he was doing that much earlier before the bend. Now check Noble now, how he's switched out to the right. There he is here. And he's going to come really strong now. He could have done that a little bit earlier, you know, and he done it the same, and he just lost last time by a shoulder.
Glory Call and Struck Gold all in 2 being produced to make a challenge, and here's Noble Captain, the yellow cap on the white outside. Glory Call sticking his head out on the far side.
Just about one.
It's very close, however. All in 2 was.
So yeah, and that's why it's really important to watch races sometimes when you've got a bit of time, just to do a quick analysis as to whether or not, you know, a horse actually 4th spot, 3rd spot was really not right, especially when the clues are here. Yeah, it took a keen hold. Right. So the jockey, he again shaken up over 3 furlongs out. The horse responds, but he just doesn't. He just doesn't. I don't know. Blame the jockey, Phil Dennis, for that maybe. Okay, so let me just go back to the slides now. Is there any questions so far on what I'm talking about? So unfortunately, the sectionals at Kempton aren't available, as I've said before, but I wanted to highlight the 2 winners. One ran exactly as it should, the other went the other route. So I took these off of a write-up, which, because it was really interesting, and it just goes to, you know, show when, if each course has a par rating, and here's the par here. Here's the par here. And if a horse runs true and as close as to that, it will win. And Chamblou, look, Chamblou literally ran as close as damn it, whereas Frodon, which was quite a big race this on Boxing Day, I remember, was overexerting all the way. Look, always ahead, always ahead, always ahead. And in the end, overstepped the mark. Now, just because you've got 102, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to. This is 95.7. This was 96.2 finish speed and efficiency. It overexerted itself. And if you look on the right, how many lengths behind or in the par compared to Chamblou, that was very consistent to the par all the way. Okay. So it's just a good analysis, really, to understand. Because obviously, when you're watching a race, you know, you haven't got a stopwatch to hand, and you're not really looking. But it's good to understand the pattern that the horse runs at. And the important thing is that the big boys, the trainers and their connections, they all actually know everything, and the jockeys, they all actually know how each horse runs. So when the jockey, because I know of a jockey or two that do give tips to people for money, when they I think I've mentioned one already, they'll say this horse isn't going to win, put X amount of money on. It's because they know that they might be holding the horse, obviously, but they also know that it's just not good enough, basically. But it will go off as fave, and they know exactly how the horse is going to run, and they know exactly how these pars are as well, and which horse is faster. The trainers know, for example, even if it's not bent, the trainers know my horse can't run to that par. It exerts itself too soon, runs out of gas towards the end, and so on. Yeah, it's really blatant. Hence why a lot of that TPD information isn't released. If I'm honest, I think they're paid not to. If I'm honest, it doesn't. However, if you're a trainer, a stable owner, you can actually get all of those details off of TPD. They're given to you for a certain amount of money, but they're given to you, and that because you can track your horse. So if you track your horse, obviously you can track other horses as well in a race, and then obviously you've got owners that have got more than one, or trainers rather, or owners that have got more than one horse in a race. Obviously, the trainer's got trainer jockey. They know which horse is going to win. Just leave it at that. Okay, so sectional speed. So the sectional speed panels show the average speed, as I've discussed already. Yeah, it's just outlining what I've discussed already. Sectional speed panels show the average speed in miles per hour for each horse during the early, mid, and late parts of the race. This is the one that I like. They're color coded as well, in the same manner as the pace of the race. Efficiency grade is our method of indicating the overall efficiency of each performance. The scale runs from A to F, with A being the most efficient distribution of energy. Finishing speed, this is where you get the flame. The finishing speed percentage is an established method of identifying how efficiently a horse has distributed its energy. It uses a formula developed by Simon Rowlands from Timeform, which is if you pay for Timeform, you get, those are the figures, but you don't need, like I say, don't need to. Simon, it's good to follow. He does some nice write-ups and compares the time of a finishing sectional, defined as the last 2 furlongs in races, up to and including a mile, and the last 3 furlongs over further distances. Right, so the lower the finishing speed percentage, the stronger the early pace will have been, because it would have expended more energy. Each race at each track has an optimum finishing speed percentage that is defined according to topography and layout. So again, depending on whether it's a straight or bends or whatever, they've got they've got a finishing percentage that they believe a horse has to run to, not more, but 2 in order to win a race. A horse that runs well whilst achieving a finishing speed percentage that is markedly above or below optimum can be expected to be capable of an even better performance if they had been able to distribute their energy more efficiently. So this is what I mean about evenly run race. Everyone always says if it's an evenly run race, then it suits those horses that aren't front runners or dwellers, if you like. Okay, they just stay quite calmly in the middle, like that other horse that we're looking at just now that won the race, called whatever the fuck it was. Okay, comparing individual finishing speed percentages with the finish pace percentage, a finish pace percentage can help put into context horses' performance compared to the overall way the race was run. Okay, so the orange flame icon appears next to a horse that has achieved a finishing speed percentage that is greater than the race finishing speed percentage. This highlights horses that have finished particularly strongly in races that have been run more slowly than ideal. So you saw that in the Noble Captain. Noble Captain, we saw that just a minute ago, and we saw that twice. He'd done it twice. Second time he narrowly lost. We saw the flame. It gave us a little indication as to how he might run, and narrowly lost. Okay, so that was quite a decent one. And keep an eye out for those flames. We'll have a look in a minute. Right, this was data from the last race. Finished 8th, but had strong optimal finish. That's potential for better. And did it go better? Is the so here it is. Right. So I remember this race. This race was a while ago. Red Evelyn, some high odds, massive odds. The odds on this horse, as you can see, 31st of December, sorry, of 2020. Yeah. This horse was priced at 200 to 1. Yeah. And it was racing at Lingfield at 7 furlongs. And it finished 8th. But check it out. Even pace race. And check, it's got a flame here. Okay. And we can see on the right here that it finished the race at 38.31 miles per hour, which is third best, I think, when you look at these. So had this horse run a little bit better or faster at the beginning, maybe, but it finished with 104.8. So it's got a flame here. So then what happened was it raced literally a month later. Course and distance, even went at class 5. Yeah. And it won the bloody race at 66 to 1 by half a length. I couldn't believe it. I was watching that race. Ridiculous. And it won. And when I looked at this, I was actually shocked. I can't remember, did I trade it? It was a blinding race. And yeah, it really did go better. Let's just have a look. Here it is. We find it now. Looking at the 7, where are we? Right. Where are we? Right, so looking at the 7 furlong Southwell race is not ideal, but it gives us an idea of how it runs. Yeah. So this is Grange-Clare View. He holds his stride, but not the cadence, though the track may play its part. I believe this was before it was resurfaced, so the track was shit. It was like running in sand. We can also see the faster Chelmsford not to his liking. So let us do a little bit more maths, yeah? So we can see 23.36, okay, times 244 is 57.07, less than the winner, okay? Now, here it is here, right? That's the, okay? And Carruthers is here. That won the race, okay? So less than the winner. It would appear that the trainers are still in discovery mode here. Right. Now, the reason I say that is they're trying to find the ideal course distance for the horse, where to, and it was spotted. It was 9 to 2 and spotted in the low 4s before drifting pre-race and finished 4th. It really does pay to do your prep. Right. So bear with me. Let me just have a look now. Next one. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is, you see this horse here, Carruthers, yeah? What I wanted to highlight was this here. It got, I think it got a little bit lucky where it won this race, basically. Oh, sorry, not Carruthers got a bit lucky, rather, but also Grange-Clare View, it's even worse, if you like. It was terrible. It held its stride, but terrible, okay? And because it came second narrowly here, in the next race, where Red Evelyn won here, it was a second fave, but it didn't perform well, obviously, at all. It came 4th. So this is what I'm trying to say. Not great. And if you look at how it really ran and how it went, this doesn't paint the true picture of it all. So it pays to do your prep and have a look, compared to Red Evelyn's figures, for example. So always have a look at that. So yeah, it's all well and good having a look at that and just using that from the page here. But did it really run like that? No, because it didn't really hold the peak average that long on the frequency. The stride it did, but not the peak, not the frequency. Okay. And it always pays, and that's how you can find a full stop. And honestly, you can get on scalps pre race as well. You'll see a drift and a drop if a horse has got these kind of like decent stats. So do not dismiss the low cadence immediately. Okay. The second place horse here was picked at the post. Has an extraordinarily low cadence, but a very decent stride. Okay, so note how consistent the stride is. Okay, and the cadence picks up towards the end. So I'm talking about the winner here. It's got a really consistent stride. Although it dropped here, it actually quickened towards the end. Okay, whereas this one, it started to slow and also went slower and higher in the stride. The frequency is more important at this stage, guys. Yeah. We would have dismissed this horse, but as a later back, yes, we would have won, but it wasn't 18-1 shot. 30 BSP on Betfair today and dropped well sub 2.0. Wolves is obviously a slower track than Lingfield, also to take that into account. So Valentinka is the one that that came second before, which has got the even stride and quite an even cadence. Okay, and this was, where are we? And this horse came second, basically on another race. So you always pays to look at this here. We need to know that the horse can manage the stride over a distance, but also can, sorry, it's here rather. This one did well actually as well, but this one here just maintained the cadence as well. So it looks good for later on if you're taking it into account in other races in the future rather. It's getting late. This might look like a blur to you. It's a stride data and cadence table. It's just, you can do it on an Excel sheet. If I find it, I'll post it on the channel. It's just, if you find a horse with a 42.43 cadence and a stride, you might just want to kind of like bring the two together. Now, anyone that can scrape a site, or if you find a way of doing it, if you can collect that kind of data on each horse and have it into an Excel sheet, then that's fantastic. It will make your life a lot easier. Right, so some useful notes. I'll go through I'll go through most of them. So just so you know, 2-year-old horses, they're bred to race at certain distances, obviously, to begin with. I mentioned this before. They are entered in 5 furlong sprint most of the time. Their sire and dam will have a background famed or notoriously known for a preference to a going type, all weather and distance. So always worth on unexposed races, 2-year-olds looking at sire and dam sires, etc. See what history they've got, whether it be at the course or the distance or the going. The dam can be underrated, and some argue that the dam is actually can be more influential than the sire itself. Okay, so, and it's always, so sometimes you see that the dam's never even been raced. It was just like there to be shagged by and studied, basically. So it's always it's nice when the dam is actually a decent horse along with the sire. Always worth checking the sire and cross-referencing with the competition. You'll find another or more horses in the same race that share the same sire. The trainers, quite 2-year-old trainers. So this is where you might find an edge here as well. The trainer at certain ages. There are certain trainers that specialize at certain courses and certain age groups. Okay, so you might want to check that out. Okay, it's, you know, when you hear a commentator or any comments that they say the yard's in good form, also check that out. The trainer may live locally to the course and even trains the courses there, hence why sometimes they might have a little bit of an edge. For example, horse isn't going to travel that far, horse is familiar and actually trains near the track, and it can have an impact. Okay, a lot of the 2-year-olds will be entered into sprints. You will notice that as a 3-year-old, once they mature, they're going up in trip as intended when they were bred. Gelding's a castrated horse, if you didn't know. So racehorses are gelded to enhance their potential to be a winner on the track. I don't always really agree with it, if I'm honest. Before being gelded, some colts are are unruly or have medical conditions that hinder their training and running ability. So yeah, the argument is that a colt doesn't remain a colt for long, because unless it's a really good pedigree, some actually are retired to stud from a young age. But some of them have got attitude problems and they don't listen when they're, so they find it hard to race the jockeys, and they geld them. The other thing that I look at as well, if a horse is gelding a horse, if you're going to geld a horse, I mean, it means it's not really decent for studding. So, I mean, I might take a dim view of that as well. Race horses are gelded to enhance. Right, yeah, I've mentioned that. If I see a race where there are colts, geldings, or fillies, I will usually look for historic trends to confirm. A 2-year-old that has been gelded, which was from decent stock, is not a good sign. To geld a young horse is very telling, and the way I perceive it is not good enough to use as a stud. Very few first-time gelded horses actually win, so that in itself is something that I've looked at. There may be some sire stats that will confirm a decent return, but overall run at around 25 to 30% loss if backing them. So yeah, that's something for you to consider. Fillies will tend to have a weight allowance, and certain race conditions will not suit fillies. When I used to be a member of Inform, and if you look at some of the systems, you will note that certain races historically doesn't matter how many, you might have 9 out of 9 wins, and it might have been a filly, and it was only 1 of 2 out of 10 horses that were actually fillies. Sometimes it'll only be a colt that wins, and vice versa. So historic data will give you that information, which is more than a coincidence as well. I haven't got the time for systems. I'm not really a system person. I like to trade differently. I've said that many times. It's not my thing. 3-year-olds, this is where things can turn around quickly. Avoid laying a horse if it goes up or down in trip for the first time, or after its first race in the season. If this is your sole reason, that is for laying. So, for example, if you've seen a horse go up in trip and you think, oh, this horse has always been racing at 5 furlongs and 6, and now it's going up to 8, I'm going to lay it. Well, actually, maybe consider this. If the horse is racing at 5 and 6, but it was bred to run at a mile or 7 or plus, maybe it just didn't win at 5 and 6 because it's just not bred and it's not good enough. And it's more stamina rather than an exertion of energy so soon. Look at the sire stats if you like. Look at whether the horse is returning from a break or has dropped in rating or anything different. Okay, exposed versus unexposed. You'll see horses. Excuse me, I'll drink some water. You'll see horses running on a track or surface type for the first time. A market check is warranted. Just because a horse hasn't run at a track before, it doesn't mean it can't win. Doesn't mean, this horse has won here 3 times before. A market check sometimes tells you that, but sometimes the unexposed is where the surprise is. Horses begin to mature and develop, hence the sudden change from a dud, if you like, to a winner. Okay, yeah, they literally do flourish, and then you might get a horse that wins 3 on the trot. And I showed you some, even in the preview, the first part, where horses have actually done really well. Newly rated handicap. Discuss this very briefly. After a certain amount of runs and placed efforts, a horse may be handicapped by the British Handicapping Association. And this is deemed by many punters as a good thing, thinking that, it's newly handicapped, because some of them do go on to win, yeah? But this is assuming that they'll be well treated by the handicap. So for example, I showed you a race before, it was Dramathos, where it was, it was rated at 85. And I showed you that other horse where it was really highly rated, and or it won a race, and then the rating kept on going higher and higher, but it just couldn't win in the higher brackets. So a winning horse that is subject to handicapping can be harshly treated at times, and you may not see that the horse win for a while until it loses a few times and dropped in rating, class, etc. So we saw evidence of that earlier on in part 1. Example, a horse wins a poor race by 7 lengths. They slap an 82 rating on it. The horse, now I mentioned horse speed here because, you know, if you've got access to Inform racing or anything else and you see the horse speed rating, I'll just briefly talk about that. If you use Inform cards or anything like that where they've got speed ratings, I always used to compare the rating to the speed rating, and sometimes if the actual opening rating was much higher than the actual top speed of the horse as per Inform's rating, I'd used to take a dim view of that. But ignore the horse speed, if I'm honest. I'm not into speed ratings at all. Track bias. Mark, could you use this type of prep you've discussed this evening for jumps or mainly flat? No, you can use for jumps as well. 100% you can use for jumps because you're going to see a horse, Mark, if it's got stamina. Okay, so first, so the good thing about this, if you get onto a course that's got the you'll have the card, you'll have your Timeform card, so you can see how it's performed to par, and you'll also be able to see the going conditions and everything on that card. But then if you look on the races and you see it's got a rating, you can see how it runs and whether or not it kind of like it has a nice even pace throughout. And you can compare it to its competitors and just see. So you'll be able to look at that on the sectional tools. So where you go in the sectional or the sectional times, is it 1 minute? Sectional tools. Yeah, on the sectional tools, when you clock into that, here it is, just show you here, for example. Yeah, so if you look at you'll be able to see on these ones here. Okay. Now let me just have a quick nose for an example for jumps. No. Looking quickly. I'll find an example and I'll post it in this chat room. I'll find some examples and I'll post them in later on, Mark. But yeah, but definitely you can use that. It's still basically the same, whether or not the horse has got the stamina, whether it improves, whether it slows down. You'll get the same flame icon if you see that the horses actually performed quite well at this course and track and conditions previously. And you can use all of that 100%. Track bias, we know about track bias, you will have heard. So certain tracks have a considerable bias, which will be reflected in the odds, obviously. Now it'll be reflected in the odds, it's well known. So obviously if you get some, for example, I don't know, is it Redcar Beverley, for example, or Bath, you'll see some tracks wide or near the rail, there'll be really low odds, and you'll see favourites winning quite a lot. The odd time you might see, if they in Australia they move the rails quite a lot, you might see an outsider win. Obviously this will depend on the distance. Lower distances prove more reliable. Larger fields can also be reliable as well. The logic behind this is due to a horse getting boxed in or having to exert too much energy to get in a position early on, or to the opposite side. So yeah, if you're drawn out wide, then a horse has got to basically speed up from the outset in order to get a better position. So it has to exert some extra energy, and that energy is greatly needed. Right, now what are we dropping like flies now, you lot? We haven't got long to go. And then we've got the jockey. So, you know, again, you can have a look at this as well. It's just basically discussing angles for jockeys. And right now, this is important. The flame form. So I'll discuss the flame form here. Okay, at Lingfield. All right, all-weather track, class 5 handicap. Came second. It then went on to turf, and it didn't do too bad. Actually, no, sorry, it didn't do too good, rather. Okay, it's a horse that likes an even run pace. Yeah, efficiency rating B. It's got a decent speed rating as well, Lucky Ava, and it's a 3-year-old bay filly. Okay, and then we can see the next time it ran at Chelmsford, not that dissimilar to Lingfield. It won a field of 8, and it won by 4 lengths. Sorry, 1.5 lengths rather, beg your pardon. And it was the joint favourite, and previously it was 12-1. So it's actually a really good way. You know, if you look at its cadence here, 2.47, 2.46, 2.45, even on the turf, 2.51. Okay, it's the stride. So yeah, it done very, very well there in this, what was it, class 5, I think, as well. So take note, always take note of the flame form. That's an extra. So Hector here, look at the flame icon here. You see it's A rated, AC rated, and shortly after, where are we? Got Wolves, got Lingfield. It didn't race too badly after Chelmsford. Eventually it wins, but here down below we've got Wolves. Comes second next race, and then eventually still with another flame icon, and eventually it wins at Lingfield by a head. Storm Melody again. You got Lingfield 6 furlongs, flame icon. And then we move up to Lingfield again, 7 furlongs, not that far behind. It was a favourite or second favourite. And then when we go back to Lingfield, Wolves here rather, it wins by a neck. It finally wins anyway after getting another flame here. All right, and then here we get one here at Wolves. Goes back to Wolves, fails, but eventually almost comes good there. And the odds, check the odds out, 12-1. It's funny because when this one's a joint favourite, sometimes they it's a funny pattern. Basically, you will get them. You will find them losing sometimes and then coming up trumps at higher odds. Fortune and Glory, exposed 8-year-old. So I want you to draw your attention to this cycle. Yeah, note how certain trainers will prefer a course and distance. 8 furlongs and Kempton here. Also not good to soft. No, good to soft win. All right, yeah. Some horses will do on return or a break. So take note of the pattern. Discuss odds. Okay, so Kempton. Yeah, look at this. Kempton. Okay. We've got Lingfield as well here, rather. Got a flame icon on the side. We can see our strike data there as well. We haven't got that at Kempton. All right. But if we look at eventually class 6, yeah, drops to class 6 here at Kempton at 8 furlongs, and it wins by 3.5. And then Kempton, remember we said good to soft and Kempford are a good mix, comes out here as and also note the favoritism, comes out here and it wins that one as well. Okay. And then note the odds basically. Where are we? It does pretty well. Some of these horses will do really well at certain odds as well. Okay, so it comes back from a break at Lingfield, 8 furlongs, wins this one as well, favourite. So it's good to note whenever some horses, whenever they're favourite or second favourite, they'll run quite strong. Okay, the market knows, or they're backed in quite well. When profiling using no data other than simple form, go to the ATR page. Let's just lose this. Go to the ATR page and look for race history and comments. See where the horse went wrong. We've discussed this already. Denied, blocked in. This is great for predicting how the race will be run. Obviously, we require the past race video available on ATR or Betfair, but not always. Horse below is a random pick, Winnetka. There's no flame, no winds, always close, tried at different distances, even a fade few times. So let's look at the comments. I've got the comments. Right, so Winnetka, always the bridesmaid here. You can see here, half a length, the nose, second. It doesn't matter where you go, it should always be second. Note how we went from 75 here at peak, right? And it just kept on, you know, it just was denied each and every time. How's your luck? Now, if we go to here, you'll see this bit. It's a really familiar pattern. It dropped to 60 rating and it still finished second. No extra inside final furlong. So Winnetka, 7 furlongs at the race, post-race, 26. That's the date of that race. And then 7 furlongs again last year. Edge left, headed close home. So again, just weakened, just kept on weakening. So it's always it was ridden headway. Just ran on. Another one ran on better and lost out again. Same pattern over 6 furlong. Host of jockeys, even Holly and TQ. Doesn't matter who rides the bloody horse, it just can't win, and you'll always get that. Group 3 race, class 1. I like you to look for ability. This is something a little bit different, actually. Ability, which I view as form and prize money. It gives you a good idea. Just a very brief look at that. Gives you a good idea. I'll show you now. I'll explain it. So TARDIS, check this race out. We're nearly done, but by the way, TARDIS won a listed class 1 at 17k by a head. Yeah, at 79 rated, and now it's 97 at 5 furlongs. That's a big jump, yeah. But because it won this, it just jumped, and it's running at 6 furlongs, and it's retaining the same jockey for the last 2 wins, which is Asheen Murphy. Yeah, favourite here. Intelligentista or whatever won 1 race in a class 4 at only 5. It's unrated and still unrated. Pearl Glory won 2 out of 2 in a class 5. Only prize money was 3 to 5,000, rated 89. Perfect News won half a length by half a length at 6 furlongs in a class 5. Unrated, still 3k there. Del Mona, I like this profile, and I will post in the next slide about this one here. This is Del Mona here. And Dubai Jewel, I like this horse as one with the same rider in 2 out of 4 6 furlong, class 4, class 5. But fields of 11 and 12, now rated 87. So Del Mona, 2-year-old bay filly. The reason I liked, you can see there's loads of ticks here. The ticks because, well, put it this way: big fields. 3 came 3rd out of 22, came 3rd out of 10, came 2nd out of 7, and 3rd out of 17, and lost by only margins most of the time, really. Now look at the prize money and the ability, 17k. So it did well in 37, 34, 98, 7. So this is running really good quality races, Del Mona, yeah? And that's why I like the look of it. And I thought, well, maybe this is worth a good back to lay or have a good chance of winning. We've got Del Mona here. Look at it. It's dropped in the odds now. Remember what it was before? It was 9. So, and now this actually proves the point I was making about if you see these things when you're handicapping, that's why it's good for scalping, because you get good opportunities like this. Yeah, and you'll understand why a horse is getting backed all of a sudden. Okay, you got a horse there with unexposed. Well, it's not really unexposed for a 2-year-old. It's raced quite a lot in high-profile races, which is actually giving you quite a lot of information compared to the rest, where you've got horses there in and around it that have competed in shit races of 2, 3, 3 and 5K max, or in class 4 and 5. And if we look at, where are we? Dubai Jewel drifted. Yeah, TARDIS was 4.3. Now 4.5. So yeah, you see what's going on here. Now, surprised Dubai drifted so much. Trade well. Domona dropped well pre as market recognized form. Intelli was a drifter based on that form. So Intelli had crap and did not attract that much, hence drifted. Okay, so you can calculate your entry. How did the 2 I liked fared in play? So Delmona dropped, you know, had you backed at the 9, you would have almost trobbed 3.3. And Dubai Jewel, which I liked but drifted, went off at 23 and dropped to 2.58 in play. Not too bad. Outside the wins with Holly, it happens. Okay, so we've got this one here. Yeah, so Romantic Times, where are we? Let's just go back. This was the winner, I believe. Yeah, here we go. Holly's here, 32 odds. I didn't even look that low, if I'm honest. I tend to focus on these here. It's if I've got that much more time, maybe I'd be interested to see why she's on that horse anyway. Yeah, but if I look now in retrospect, like I did, raced in a class 4 maiden, class 5. The prize money was crap, even though she was on board. You could have looked at some of that maybe, but the fact that this one here, the Newbury listed 17K, didn't perform well, hence the price. Holly hadn't been on the horse since, so whatever happened in that race, yeah, this is why I say sometimes it happens. Shit happens. Some more examples of a 4-year-old bay filly. We've got here a Flame. It raced at Wolves, class 6, division 1, lost by just under a length, came second. Okay, 16 to 1. Naturally, the odds dropped next time out, but didn't perform well. But then the market fancied it this time. And note the jockey, pretty same. Rating and the method of the style of running, all really good. Won the race quite well and even got a really good efficiency rating for it as well. It's just things for you to look for. Check the Flame. Check the Flame. The Flame's important. So you can see here, Southall. This horse has been racing at Southall all the time. Okay. Had a Wolves, 75 rated, 74. You get 2 Flames here. And then next race at these high odds, it wins the race. You can see from the free, I mean, it's look 2.47. That's really decent anyway, if I'm honest. So again, it would determine that the pace of the race would determine whether it would suit a horse or not. But evenly paced horses, yeah, they're capable of winning quite well, depending on the pace again. Yeah, so yeah, I think I called this in the group at the time. Each way and finished 3rd from 8 that day. But 12 days later, won at 14.6 6 BSP at slightly higher par of 85. Yeah, this was later on. Duke of Florence, old boy, but done very well as an old boy. So never had access to the breakdowns, but the flame appeared. Decent strike data also. So 119 BSP, that should be, sorry. 250 IP. The second place horse also decent at 30 BSP. This is Red Evelyn. This was the one I showed you earlier. So yeah, it's I've discussed this one already. I say, so why has the trainer done this? So right, what do I mean? You're right. So just when you think the trainer sussed it, yeah. So he raced the horse at Wolves, at Kempton, yeah, at Lingfield at 8 furlongs. Wasn't badly run, the horse. It was going places. It was improving, as you can see, and it finally lost to Red Evelyn, and it was 18-1. And you've got the stride data here, pretty consistent. And what did he do, this trainer? This is what pissed me off in a way. If I was the owner, I'd be pissed. He took it to Chelmsford at 7 furlongs, yeah, and then you can see it never performed very well, even with Holly on board. He then tried it on turf, didn't perform with a decent jockey on board. Again, tried it at 7 furlongs. So he kept on switching 8 furlongs, 7, 8, you know, when all he had to do was kind of like follow that formula there. Okay. So maybe looking and sticking to 8 furlongs, maybe sticking to at Lingfield. He might have had a win for the client. William Buick, joint favourite here. Is it going to win? Well, it's Wolves. It's class 6. You'd think it might do well. Yeah, because class 5. But really, this horse has been raced and not good enough. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. It's just pissing in the wind, really, and that's pretty poor for me. Okay, this is actually another pattern. Okay, pulled up on horses that have been pulled up or that have fallen or came second and were the favourites last time out. So, interesting. If a horse has fallen and it was a favourite on the jumps, take note when the odds increase next time. For me, this is pure and sheer utter filth manipulation. Okay, Unseated was a favourite, slightly better odds. Second favourite, wins by a shoulder. Terrible, isn't it? This one here, you can't see it. Unseated, slightly better odds, 5-1. Comes second. Over on the right hand side, look at this. So this one here, one that came second, one then, one again, then favourite again, obviously based on these, pulled up. Look at the odds next time out after nearly a year. Well, not a year, but 10 months, whatever, then wins. Okay, so you can look at that pattern as well. You can see loads of these patterns. It's quite terrible, really, but you see it all the time. Pulling up. Look at this. Pulled up twice here. And then next time wins. Put some cheek pieces on first time as well, just to rub it in. Pulled up here. Comes out as a fave and wins. And then class 2. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. Quite interesting. Piss take, question mark. One went from chasing to hurdles. Okay, so this is the piss take. So yeah, you've got this horse here as a fave, doesn't win. Yeah, next race 6-1, unseated, and then you've gone from chasing to hurdles. Yeah, and this is really not uncommon, and the odds are really high, and he wins. Yeah, okay. Brilliant. And you get it here as well. Check this one out. It's a favorite here. Fell. Then next time, 5-1, wins, and then just wins again just to take the piss a bit more. And another. Yeah, it's very addictive, this angle. Pulled up, favorite, and it wins next time at 16-1. How's that? This one here, fell, joint fave, and then switches to chasing, and then wins at 7-1 industry, or SP rather. And that concludes the session, the video. It's not too hard to look at the stride data. It's not too hard to look at the pars. The extra bits that I added in, actually a little bit of gravy, angles for you to consider and look at when you're handicapping, as little surprises. The participants that are still here may have fallen asleep. Thank you to all of you that are still here. Appreciate that. Who has any questions or anything to ask me before I end this? 1:35. I knew it would go this long. Goodness me, what time does that? 11, 12, 1. It's 3.5 hours. Jesus Christ. I knew it would be 3 hours. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Any questions? Anything at all? Tom, no, I don't actually. I stopped doing that years ago. Not interested on. I don't. It's normally priced in, if I'm honest. So I don't bother. I mean, if you're into system bets, you can use, or you can go on RBD and look at the draws. You'll find that there's a correlation already with, and it's priced in. So, for example, Wolverhampton draw 1 at a certain distance, you're not going to get any winners, or in Bath that certain, you're not going to. It's if you want to do that, you can, but the odds, if you're laying, that is, they'll be quite high. So won't worry too much about that. Do you take weight and adjusted weight into consideration? Yeah, do you know in that video that I did? No, in that video I did on the YouTube one, it's actually quite a decent video, using the Excel sheet on racing bet data. So you can look at angles. I mean, listen, the horse isn't going to really fucking lose or win, or because it's 1 pound, a massive beast like that, because it's a pound lighter or 6 pounds heavier. Not really, yeah. What you can do though is you can take that as a signal or an angle and investigate along with other things. So you can look at, so the video I did with racing bet data, I looked at horses that have dropped within a certain bracket of weight, and that maybe have run really fast, or maybe have lost only by a head or a nose, and you take a few of those angles into account, and you kind of like see what it throws up. As I'm talking about winning distances or losing distances, yeah, it's actually worth noting a horse that's run really well in a race and that has lost by, let's say, a head in the next race, providing it's the same class and conditions are similar, that horse will be quite well fancied to win. So it might be a favourite or top 3 at least, or very close to the face price. So it's priced in. What you got to see is, what you got to basically take into account is when it won that race, and this is where watching the video helps actually very quickly, because you don't have to watch the whole thing, just watch the replay, the finish, the last couple of furlongs. What you need to take into account is, was the horse that was supposed to win blocked, or did the jockey make a mistake, and did the other horse win by luck, by chance? That's what like that other one earlier on, we saw the video of Good Call, whatever it was called. It just about hung on, yeah. And the captain, noble captain, just fucked up basically. So it's always notable to look at all of these things. And if you basically watch this video back in sections and start taking notes of what to look at, then you can when you're writing it down, you see, you can then go to racing bet data where there's a large spreadsheet of information and start correlating it with the data. So for example, win distance to winner last time out, position last time out, and the stall, or whatever the angle is, the weight increase or decrease, the OR. And a lot of those columns, the additional columns on RBDs, because I asked him to put them on there. The pars, for example, he didn't want to put the pars. He didn't know anything about it. I said to Chris, "Do you mind putting the pars on, please? Because it's quite important." And so you've got the par rate in there, so you can use that as well. So when you're looking at the card, you can see whether or not a horse that's come up last time out at a 0 to 75 and has gone on to a 0 to 85, has it won, and so on. Yeah. So all of those things can be applied, because some people said, "Oh, aren't you doing the racing bet data?" There's nothing really that I'm going to show you extra on racing bet data that I haven't done for free. He's put them on YouTube. It's all on there. So if you go to his YouTube channel, you'll see the 2 videos that I've done for free. And it's quite simple to see how to manipulate the data. What I've taught you guys tonight, or tried to teach you anyway, is how to take the information off of a card and really make use of it and get you to think as to angles or information clues that are there that you can use. Now, you can go and bury yourself in it, but my advice isn't to bury yourself in it. I would go down the angle of Timeform with the class pass. And if I was you, I would probably look at, in retrospect, until you get used to it, the stride data. So if you was to go into Wolverhampton, for example, or any turf track that's got the data, or Lingfield on the 18th of July, just bring it over, right? So if you was to go to the 18th of July here and look at this Chagall, for example, and find out what the hell this horse was all about. And it won here with a flame. No future. Future entries, by the way, you'll see on the day whether this horse is being booked in to run again. And if it's been booked in to run again in the next day or two, then obviously heads up. It might be because it's going to win this race, or maybe lose this race, but then win the following. Do you see what I mean? So there's a few clues there as well. So if I go back, let's just go back again. So yeah, you can have a look and compare basically the stride data just to see what the situation was here. For example, this horse ran, so Bath, for example, is a turf track that's got stride data, and Brighton as well. Brighton being a little bit downhill, you might get longer stride as well. So yeah, you can compare this. So this is 235. What was the distance? Over 1 mile. Okay, so that's not bad. And then Chagall, and you can compare these two here and see whether or not, one might be better than the other, and so on. And you can compare using the sectional tools. You can see how these ones here, Chagall ran really well towards the end, picked up very well. Look at that speed. And if I look at the full result, on his toes, raced keenly towards the rear, pushed along, turned it. So you see, he conserved his energy. It's the style. Favourite as well. Pushed along, turning in headway, one fell out, switched left, soon ridden to lead insight and ran on well. Okay, so the ran on well means this horse here, later on, it will go up in rating, and it will probably run well later on as well, because it had extra to give, and it seems like it pissed it in this race. It was too easy. So yeah, so there's more to come from this particular horse. And yeah, a lot of what I did and a lot of what I learned was doing this, albeit quite late at night or whenever I had free time. I'd always look at the results and have a look at the stride data and whether or not, you know, would I have spotted this, for example, before? Here we go. Would I have spotted this horse winning earlier? Maybe, you know, and you got the flames here. You know, this horse here won with a flame. It was a favourite. It kept on winning. Goodness me, Captain Kane. I mean, look at it on turf. Another flame here. Wins again. Longer. You see what I mean? You'll find it all, and you'll find how consistent the stride data can be on finding those little nuggets. But pars and stride data, you can use one. I mean, personally, the stride data gives you a different kind of angle. You can add that along with the par ratings and also always read these comments in the last race if you're unsure, just to get an idea of the horse. You know, is it going to compete? Is it a false fave? Is it, you know, how's it going to run in this race? Basically, you know, gives you an idea. Any other questions? Anyone awake? I've got to download this. I've got to bloody go and watch a film now and wait for this to download. In the chat, what's in the chat? Yes, any question on Telegram? Right, cool. Okay, if that's it, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. It's very long. I don't expect people to have stayed awake or concentrated too much. Try, when you're looking back at the video, try and timestamp. Try and put timestamps in and make some notes. But yeah, my tip would be to stick with the pars above all. Okay, and the stride data is decent. And if you practice now, a little bit, it will hold you well for the winter when the all-weather tracks are coming back. You know, in a few months, in October, you will have you get some nice big priced horses then. Right, so yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Take care.